spook easily stung.
Have you ever explored the depths of fear? Have you ever wondered what depravity dwells within the imagination of a storyteller that prompts them to exhume horrors untold and expose those horrors to unsuspecting audiences? Some are repulsed, and some are shaken. However, there are those who are invigorated. So to those demented souls, we invite you to journey inward into the dark bowels of human imagination. Press play, and you will discover what's in the podcast.
And welcome to another edition of What's in the Podcast. And for today, well, it was March 17th, 2005 Earth time, just about 3 years after 9/11, and also with the success of the revival of Battlestar Galactica, that another highly influential British series was revived and brought to a new level of popularity that even fans of the original series never thought it was possible. Yes, it was 20 years ago that Doctor Who came back to our screens. And for those, I have been very open about it. Before I was a hardcore horror fan, Doctor Who has been my gospel. It was the show that really kind of inspired me to become an actor, a writer, everything. And even though my livelihood and everything has leaned into horror, Doctor Who is still part of every fiber of my being. And because of that, I felt the need to do this podcast episode in tribute to it. Because one other aspect of Doctor Who, which a lot of people don't really think about, it's horror. Horror is actually interwoven into the fabric of this eccentric little show. And, well, naturally, me just talking about it alone, would be, well, I might as well just put a camera up and just make a big old blog about it, but that would be boring as hell. So with that, and again, as a testament to my love of the show, it has given me so much, including great friends, not just in America, but across the pond. And one friend in particular I have stayed very close with over the decades, actually. Even back in the days when I actually made my own Doctor Who fan films. In fact, I think that's kind of the thing that made us friends to begin with.
Yes, it was, yes.
Yes, so
I was his fan, so
yeah, and then after that I became yours.
Was.
And so with that, I introduce a very dear friend, Matt Chambers, aka Walsallmatt. Welcome to the show.
How do you, John? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so yeah, I think the first things first. I mean, over on my side, I was living in South Florida, and I was hell bent to because I knew damn well the odds of me ever getting cast to play the Doctor was pretty much a snowball's chance in hell. And I should know, I live in Florida. That's as close to hell as you can get. So I put friends together and I made my first Doctor Who fan film, A Survivor's Triangle. And much to my delight, people enjoyed it, including yourself. And you actually came forward and just started chatting.
Yeah, I was watching it the other night.
You watch Survivor's Triangle again?
I do. I watch Doctor Who fan films quite often because why not? Because basically, there's been a community that's formed, and they're taking a great interest in fan films from yesteryear, and then I kind of came along and said, right, we're going to start off with some good ones. So I sat them down with Survivor's Triangle, and literally they all said, "This is bloody brilliant. How have we never heard of this one before?" So I said, yes, because you put Doctor Who fan film on in YouTube, and then you just click the very first thing. You need to dig, and that's exactly what happened. And remember, it's out of the mists came John, and this wonderful, wonderful fan film.
Right.
Absolutely typical.
What is?
Humans! You put them in a dimensionally transcendental time-space machine, and what do? They try to find the strings. Meanwhile, Jennifer Lopez calls herself an actress, and everyone believes it.
Not everyone.
The truth is out there, you lot keep saying, yet when it stares you down with a periscope eye and a plunger for an arm, you call it a lie.
Oh,
I'm glad you can go back to watch it. I actually have hit that point in my life where I'm like going, I don't know if I can go back and watch it again just because I'm like
it's always
so
nice to have someone
self-conscious.
who knows where the bodies are buried.
Yeah. Actually, honestly, I was actually more proud of the other one I did where we were trying. I remember David Nagel, who was kind of like our like the wrangler for all of us, I remember for a
Yes.
time. I know he wanted it for the 50th, wanted all of us to kind of do our own little splinter mini films to kind of come together and then come together to do like one big
Yes,
multi-doctor
I
thing
remember
with
that.
all of
I
us.
remember that plan well.
Yeah, and I think he was astonished that I think I was the only one that actually finished my film in conjunction with what they had,
Yeah.
or at least what they had in mind. I think, and then when I finally unveiled it, I think he was like, we haven't started yet.
Yeah, life kind of got complicated and weird and adult.
Life life
Life,
intrudes.
life.
Life.
Don't talk
Yeah.
to me about
So
life.
yeah, don't talk to me
Talk to
about
me about
life.
life.
I like doing the Alan Rickman version. Life, don't talk to me about life. He just had a wonderful kind of quiver to his voice
He
when he did
did,
it.
yes.
Yeah, God, we miss you, Alan. Since the core topic of the day is Doctor Who, let's go ahead and, respectively, since a lot of people don't even know my story, go ahead and where did you start with Doctor Who? Like, where did your love of it begin?
Oh, lordy. Okay, so I was born in '84, which would have been the end of Davison and
Yeah,
I feel the
start of Colin Baker. Yeah.
start of Colin Baker. So my first eidetic memory of Doctor Who is actually the opening titles for Trial of the Time Lord. I remember the theme tune and the graphics very vividly. And
Yeah.
then years later, it's one of those things that it was never saw it on VHS until they got the massive TARDIS in which, as a kid, could never afford. So I didn't even know that was that. And then UK Gold came along, and then you see it on the screen, and then there's that theme tune you suddenly remember, and you sort of had this moment, and so that was disturbing. But the very first story that we ever recorded on VHS was Survival, which me and Dave talked about. Me and
Yeah,
Dave
it ended up being
talked
the
about
last
this
one.
yes, it was, yeah. And when you're a kid, you rewatch a video over and over and over again, and I knew all of this. So I was kind of hooked on Doctor Who, but in a very, very particular area. And then all of a sudden, the videos came out.
Yeah.
And my dad being a sort of closet Doctor Who fan, I'm sort of the embodiment of all the nerdiness that he kept inside. I am extruding into the universe. So one way for one reason or another, I ended up getting an awful lot of these videos. Now I watched the first VHS I watched was The Time Warrior with John Pertwee.
Ooh, I love that one.
Now when you watch this, that one scared the living daylights out of me, but for completely different reasons. I was kind of on the cusp. I could go with Doctor Who, or I could go away from Doctor Who. And then the next time we got a video was the Pyramids of Mars. It's still very dear to me because, like I say, Sutek is has recently come back.
Oh boy, oh man, Lynn and I. The second Sutek's name popped up, we jumped. We were like, "No! We're in trouble. We're in trouble."
I cried. I really did. I was so happy
With Gabriel Wolf back
to
do the voice again.
But like I say, we shall learn more of that wisdom later.
Ooh.
but you can imagine when you get a VHS when you're a kid, your first thing you want to do is you want to go home and you want to watch it there and then. And it was one of those nightmare moments where my dad says, "Now we've got to go to your nan's before we go home, so you can watch it when you get home, not a problem." And so this pouted 6-year-old is holding on to this W.H. Smith bag with the Pyramids of Mars in, like grim death. Gets to me nan, and my nan, who God love her, she said, "Well, you can watch it here." So literally, pop me in front of the TV, put the video on, and it's sort of snacks and stuff, and so all the adults go off and talk about adult things, and then they realised that they hadn't heard a peep out of me for about 2 hours flat, and they
Mhm.
were really worried. And the story goes is that my mum sort of peeks around the corner into the sitting room, and there's me, literally transfixed on Pyramids of Mars, and I had not moved. You know, there was still cake and fizzy drink untouched. Everything else didn't. There was me, there was me and my nan's Alsatian dog watching Pyramids of Mars, and after just at that point, my entire soul and my bank account belonged to Doctor Who. At that moment,
Beautiful.
Tom, Sutek, Sarah Jane, the whole lot. It sort of grabbed hold of me, and it has never let go. Never. Mm.
Beautiful. Yeah, I had kind of a backwards entry into Doctor Who. I kind of always joke that I was the one that it perfectly landed with because I jumped on in 1996. Now, for me, of course, America accessibility to Doctor Who was not as simple. The only way any Americans were able to watch it was via public broadcasting, or PBS, as we called it, and a lot of times it aired after Sesame Street. And as a little teeny tiny kid like I was, I just remember being that show with that really creepy theme song
Mhm.
and people that talked weird. But then, or at least by American standards, weird. Now I come to the realization, as Henry Higgins very eloquently said, why can't the English teach your children how to speak? Well, or actually, no, he said, in America, they haven't used it for years. So, yeah. So, for me, I really didn't know what it was all about until 1996. And uh, my brother, of course, he had actually watched it for a long time. He told me, John, there's something that's going to be on Fox on Tuesday night. I need you to record it. It's something called Doctor Who.
I know what's coming.
And as it turned out, it was the TV movie that was produced by Philip Siegel, that was done in conjunction with Amblin Entertainment, and it was designed to be a backdoor pilot in the hopes that they would revive the show. And the whole history of the production is a whole beast in and of itself. But
It is.
fortunately, they did what they did, thank God, and they had Paul McGann as the Doctor. Well, actually, it started with Sylvester McCoy regenerating into.
Mhm.
So again, we can go on all day talking about how that was not a really smart move. Even Sylvester McCoy has voiced regret about doing that. But for me, yeah, I felt like I was being thrown the deep end. But fortunately, the way they did it, they were hitting me with all these cool ideas to which I had never encountered before. I mean, sure, I saw the TARDIS floating in the vortex, and I was going like, is that like a Bill and Ted thing? But then because again, because for America, when it comes to time travel with the phone box,
That's what the first one you saw, yes.
but then I made the connection that when I see this, funny looking, tiny older gentleman in this gorgeous set, this beautiful control room set, I was like, what is going on here? And then I made the connection, wait a minute, that's inside that?
Mhm.
Immediately. And then they just started talking about regeneration. And then I actually see the regeneration happen. And I was like, this is the coolest freaking thing I'd ever encountered. And then to just seal the deal, Paul McGann was just effervescent in
He
the role of
was.
the Doctor. He was just beautiful. He was enthusiastic. He was romantic. He was adventurous. He was smart. He didn't go to violence. He was always, and if he can maneuver out of a situation, he'll just give you a jelly baby and distract you with it, or he'll hop on a bike and just tear
Yeah.
ass away. And
Mhm.
contrary to what people say, the Doctor has done that shit a lot.
Oh
Pertwee
God,
did
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
McCoy did it.
They've all done
Shut
it.
up. Yeah.
I was saying.
So for me, my brain just exploded, and I said to my brother, yeah, and like, where more? Well, I didn't know it, but the reason, around the same time this aired, John Pertwee had just passed, and our PBS station was actually rebroadcasting the entirety of the Pertwee era.
Oh, nice.
So I jumped on. So I actually jumped on episode 6 of Inferno. Naturally,
Ooh.
because it's episode 6, I didn't know the entirety of what the story was
Mhm.
about, but I didn't care because I was watching this. And yeah, one fatal flaw of Americans, especially during the era that I discovered Doctor Who, we were spoiled as this is post Jurassic Park, mind you, and post Terminator 2. We were spoiled when it came to special effects. So we demanded, and of course, Star Trek The Next Generation, which that prick Michael Grade trotted out as a reason why Doctor Who was terrible. Unfortunately, we were spoiled by high production value, but I was watching this. I was so transfixed with the story. And of course, John Pertwee,
Yes.
big old ball of charisma.
Yeah,
and
sex on legs, seriously.
Oh, God, yes. God, yes.
And he
Jimi Hendrix, John Pertwee, the only two people that can get away with velvet and frills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so in America, especially during the wilderness years, as it was called, the era between 1989 going into 2005, it was hard for Americans to find anything for Doctor Who, but the videos were coming out, and actually turns out my sister-in-law's dad was a fan, and he actually let me borrow some of his. So I watched stuff like Planet of the Spiders. My first real Tom Baker was City of Death, which is now easily my favorite Tom Baker story. And then I discovered our Best Buy just had this shelves of Doctor Who videos,
and you were just like, mine.
Yeah. So my first VHS was The Demons.
Oh, you get all the good ones.
Well, I kind of just did like a connectivity thing. I was like, okay, I want more Pertwee because Pertwee's so damn cool, and so I picked up The Demons and then Revenge of the Cybermen. Hell, I actually thought it was, and actually my mom rented The Five Doctors, and I thought it was going to be a documentary. I didn't realize it was actually going to be an episode, but I watched that. So I figured it was okay. So Davison and then that guy at the beginning of the TV movie. I didn't know about Colin Baker until I went to Best Buy and I saw videos like, oh, there's another one. Okay. So that's, long story short, that's where my love affair began with it. And from an American side, it was a royal pain in the ass, especially during that time, was a pain in the ass to be a Doctor Who fan because I was surrounded by Star Wars fans and all these other ones who were so snobbish about the fact that, oh God, what you like that show with the crappy special effects and I'm like going, yeah, but the writing's really fucking good.
Yeah.
The writing's amazing.
If you were to put, I think it's a little unfair to compare classic Doctor Who with Star Trek: The Next Generation, because there's a seismic, gaping void between what they could do and what Doctor Who could do. Put Doctor Who next to what we call classic Trek, and I'll tell you something. You look at some of the monsters in Star Trek, the original series, and you look at Doctor Who monsters, you're just thinking, these could be easily made by the same bloke. But the writing was still so fucking up there,
Yeah, precisely. So,
it's just kind of... Which is this is a bit of a hot take as well, is that the thing is with Doctor Who, as opposed to Star Trek: The Next Generation, it's not always all of that. Yes, because there was some time when you watch Star Trek, even as an adult, so definitely as a kid, you do sort of sit there thinking, oh, get on with it. I mean, wouldn't miss it for the world, but there were some episodes you're just thinking, oh, guys, come on, can we shoot something? Please.
Yeah, whereas a Doctor Who, there's always something weird, something interesting going on, and back then they did the serialized format, so they also kind of upped the ante by having cliffhangers and being tuned in next week or something like that. So it's like, which is something that which America only dabbled in, but not to the level of what Doctor Who did, where it was so. Oh, actually, come to the realization for a lot of our outliers looking in. Go ahead and give me since I'm realizing we're kind of throwing it much like the 1996 movie, we're throwing people into the deep end. Go ahead and give me a breakdown of the core concept of what Doctor Who is.
Oh, crikey. Okay. Core concepts of Doctor Who. Okay, you have the Doctor. Man, woman, other is a being from another world who travels around in time and space in a ship called the TARDIS that is disguised as a police box. The first Doctor and his granddaughter Susan landed in 1963. The ship, which has a cloaking device which can make it look like anything, got stuck as a police box. And for the last 60 plus years, this has been zooming around time and space as a police box, and nobody cares less because it is the coolest goddamn thing you will ever see in your life. The Doctor's of a good, a very moral character, lands in the middle of trouble, solves the problem, and then is off again. And they're followed around by the most offensively gorgeous array of companions you've ever seen in your life. I mean, some of them you might not like in terms of personality, but let's face it, there's not one of them you kick out of bed. Yeah. John's going through the list and going, you know what? He's not wrong.
No, I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, I suppose the Brigadier could get it.
Well, the Brigadier was by.
Yeah.
The Brigadier was by. You want? Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, Matthew, we're not going down that road. See, it's
no. We're not
going to. It's a fun science fiction, science fantasy. It became science fiction, and then went into science fantasy when the likes of Star Wars and that body of science fiction was starting to emerge, and it deals with really good ideas, really good plots. Okay, the money's nothing to write home about. The special effects aren't that fantastic, but they made it work. And there's always something inherently brilliant about it, because anyone who's ever been a fan of the show, yes, they'll accept its faults, but they don't care about that. They care about the characters, they care about the Doctor, they care about the companions, they care about the situation, and they care about the fact that the Doctor does care, And it's this fun romp around the universe, and that basic idea has not changed since the year dot. It hasn't changed.
That's a major thing I've always told people. For people who always say with whatever's happening with the show currently, they always say, "Oh, the show's dead." It's like, no, the show has never betrayed its core principle. Throughout its entire 60+ year run,
doing what it does.
Yeah, but there's one thing that has become pretty hand in hand with Doctor Who. In fact, a term was created in relation to this. There are times that the show actually got legitimately scary, so much so that the term behind the sofa was coined because children would skitter behind the sofa in fear of all the stuff that would be featured. And now, of course, we'd be remiss to not talk about the fact that the show was in crisis of being canceled until they unveiled a monster, which was, even in the eyes of creator Sidney Newman, kind of a abomination. He did not want bug-eyed monsters.
He didn't want them at all, no.
But Verity Lambert stood her ground, and we ended up getting the Daleks, which was created by Terry Nation, and pretty much catapulted the show to the stratosphere and ended up sparking the imagination of children worldwide.
And I'll tell you something, with the Daleks, I think the scare factor as well is that you got to remember British TV, especially back in the 60s, it was still early days for telly. I think TV itself had only been around for about 10, 15 years, something like that. Because you've still got Britain coming out of a post-war, and it's still it's still reeling. It took a long time for Britain to recover, and so British transmissions were very prim and proper, And they used to say that in the early days of radio that all the presenters would turn up in evening gowns and tuxedos just to be on the radio, because they'd have a live audience, so people were watching them. And it was this very British, this very prim and proper, and there was never anything too disturbing. Everything was supposed to be really genteel, and then along comes Doctor Who. In fact, now I stick my neck out. Actually, the BBC's always pushed. Because we had the Quatermass series, which is sort of
that's right,
back in the 50s, and that, I think, that laid the groundwork for what the BBC worked out, what they could and couldn't get away with. And then obviously when Doctor Who came along, they kept on pushing the envelope more.
Yeah. And
I still say that the very first cliffhanger involving a Dalek is probably one of the most frightening ones that it's certainly the most hair-raising.
She's being menaced by a plunger.
She's being menaced by a plunger. This is.
But it's still like a sense of the unknown. She's very clearly terrified of it, and
it's her scream. She really sold that, I mean, it could have been someone just going, huh, 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 like that against the wall, but no, she just absolutely belted that one. And even to this day, I watched it a couple of weeks ago actually, because I do. And it just fades to black, and all you are left with the question is like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What? You know, and all that. And I see it still gives me chills to this day. And I think that's the essence of a lot of black and white horror. Is a lot of
Yeah.
it makes you ask, what the was that? You know.
So before we dive a little too deeper, so you could, and I'm just gonna be cheeky and go ahead and say this. I'd like to think when the show veered into horror is when the show exploded because, and like you said, British TV was like more prim, more proper, more. So the idea that the show actually veered hard into like legit horror, not even camp horror, like legit horror,
Mhm.
was when people clung to the show because in all likelihood, they probably hadn't seen anything like that and that had the daring
Yes,
to show it.
that's
And
exactly
as
what
I've
it
always
is.
said, horror is the renegade genre.
Hmm.
So since we're on this, and since by tradition, anyone who's been on this show for the first time, this is kind of veering away from Doctor Who, maybe, possibly.
Okay.
Um, Go ahead and give me your origin story. What brought you into the realm of horror?
Oh, now that's dead simple. That was Hammer Horror. Because
Oh yeah,
when I yes, see,
just saw the Vampire
everyone
Lovers
who's
recently.
just
I loved
listening
it.
to this is just going, yeah, we know exactly what this guy's all about now. Um, Back in the 80s and 90s, the BBC had a lovely tradition of putting old school scary. In fact, they did a lot of old film reruns on Friday nights on BBC Two around about 6, 7 o'clock. They'd repeat a lot of science fiction B movies. So that's how I saw most of the George Powell back catalogue, and like I said, Day the Earth Stood Still, War of the Worlds. I mean, War of the Worlds is still probably one of the most frightening films that 7-year-old me had ever watched. It's stuff that really sort of brought you in, and then Channel 4, because we only had 4 channels back then. Channel 5 didn't come until the late 90s. And so on Channel 4, they were kind of the renegade channel, and they were putting all the really boundary pushing stuff, and they had license to repeat an awful lot of science fiction as well. And BBC had a lovely, lovely tradition of putting on the old school scary films on BBC One, and it'd either be a double bill, which would start off at about 10 o'clock at night, and it takes you about 2 in the morning, and that's when they switched everything off for the night
Oh.
until they come back at 6:30. Um, so I watched an awful lot of horror films through that because my mum wanted to watch them and my dad wanted to watch them. And again, this whole sort of thing, the way I was brought up is that if they thought I could handle a film, not just me and my sister, is that if we could handle these films on our own, then we could watch them. Then they'd
Yeah.
record them, we could watch them. And I'll tell you something, they used to unnerve us, they used to excite us. And one or two did scare me. One or two did genuinely frighten me. Because I was always frightened by things that might be outside and they could just about get in. That could really sort of stand for a lot of
Yeah.
things. But the one that frightened the ever-loving daylight out of me, which has since become a firm favourite of mine, is Hammer's version of the Mummy. Because there's a scene where Christopher Lee's mummy is at the window of the sanatorium and he's going after Peter Cushing's dad, and he just tears off the window and literally drops into the room and strangles this guy to death. And when you're at a young age and you're sort of a little bit, a little bit wary about what might be outside, the idea of something coming in like that, and then my days are numbered. Trust me,
Yeah.
that fucking ever loving daylight out of me. But it was a lot. There was a lot of Hammer horror when I was growing up, and I loved every single one, even the crap ones.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well,
But we saw all the
that is-
good ones first, so it was.
see, that's a kind of a fascinating idea because, like, when I was going through watching Doctor Who, of course, yeah, the production value, like especially in the early days, the production value Yeah, I mean, by my standards, yeah, not great. I mean, I was also watching Mystery Science Theater 3000, so I was familiar
I love that
with
show.
low production value. But I think because of that, I ended up cultivating a sense of appreciation for
Mm.
the work that goes into the making of it. I always actually tell people, you know, like when it comes to Doctor Who, you watch that show from the beginning moving forward. You're not just watching a sci-fi series, you're watching the history of television in its evolution.
Yes, yes,
Because
you are very much
if
so.
you really go back and because like you said, television was in its infancy during that time.
Mhm.
So it would be kind of fascinating to, so I tell people it's a great exercise to really kind of appreciate the work that went in
Mhm.
to making this show. And when you especially see with the incredible epic scale work that they're doing now, it's kind of astonishing to see that this show has remained consistently ambitious in terms of its scale, and through that ambition, in tending to engage with the audience on levels that are both visceral but also poignant and exciting.
You're absolutely right. And I'd say something. We're dead lucky because when they were making Doctor Who, they had to record everything in one block. But
Yeah,
it was the true infancy of recorded TV. Because before then you had quite a mass. You had basically you had British TV pre 63. They were literally doing shows as if they were live stage plays, and they were
hmm,
recorded. They weren't even recorded. They were literally the camera would be pointed at something. It would be transmitting from in camera, so there wouldn't actually be. Yeah, they didn't record anything per se, apart from some opening titles. But even then, everything was done live. Everything was done like a live stage show. So I still say that we are dead lucky that they weren't still doing that when Doctor Who came along, because there'd be elements of Doctor Who that we would never see. Because
yeah,
the way British TV used to work is they used to do the main transmission of one program, and then they would do a repeat performance. I don't know, midweek or something. Yeah, but I still say we're dead lucky because can you imagine if Doctor Who they said, oh yeah, the original episodes they used to transmit those live, they never recorded them because they
yeah.
couldn't, because recording medium was so horrifically expensive. I think that's where most of the budget went, is because they had to pay for everything. They had to pay for all the
Hmm.
set, and they also had to pay for all the tape. That's why the missing stories is a whole different beast because there was a lot of this stuff that they just couldn't afford to keep because they only had a certain amount of tapes. You see, so I
Yeah.
say that we are so lucky that Doctor Who was being made when they could record these things.
Hmm. Yeah, because they did have a lot of on location shooting, so they were able to kind of integrate that into the episode itself. So yeah, they were able to kind of widen the scale. Now, I mean, the other fascinating thing about this one, the thing that kind of became innate with the show was also because of the core concept, because he's traveling through time and space, there is this sense of freedom to be able to just do whatever the hell you want. I mean, yeah, things don't make sense on Earth. Like the ideas that we're being hit with don't make sense on Earth, but if you go to another planet, this is just what makes sense to them. This is their world, and there are going to be creatures because life takes so many different shapes and forms. They hit you with these monsters, or at least what we think are sometimes. And I love that the show has tackled this idea. There are times where they run into creatures and they think they're like going to be a menace, and this show says no. You
Oh,
know these, yeah, many times no. Sometimes they're not the monster. Sometimes we are the monster. That's
very much
another
so.
thing I thought was, yeah. I always loved that the show had the balls to delve into that idea, is the idea that man is the biggest monster of them all sometimes. And I love that you even alluded to this idea, the idea that could be something outside your own home
Mhm.
coming to get you. John Pertwee always said very fondly of his era. He always said, like, I always believed it's much more threatening. Like if you that something on Earth is coming to get you. Like there's nothing more terrifying than seeing a Yeti sitting on your loo. And I was like, granted, I'd be laughing at that image, but simultaneously, I get his point.
Yeah,
Well, that's why
absolutely.
I've always said that the great thing about the show is that it always makes the ordinary extraordinary in a lot of
Mhm.
respects.
It
I
does.
mean, you could be going down the tubes and no, and then there's the Yeti. Just all of a
Yeah,
sudden, it's like that's it's a terrifying thought, the idea that something that you do so that's mundane becomes automatically threatening and terrifying because now something extraordinary is happening that you don't understand.
Mhm.
And that's a terrifying concept to me. And I love the fact that Doctor Who has always played
Always
with
done
that
that, yeah.
idea.
Really
And even
has.
better, it's done so in different horror aesthetics. It's not just monster horror. It's not just sci-fi horror. They've even veered into gothic horror a
They've
lot of
done
times.
they've done gothic horror, they've done body horror, which is
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
no
was actually
no
gonna say
body, I was just saying the body
Seeds of
horror.
Doom,
Well, there's Seeds of Doom, and there's also the thing is with body
Ark
horror.
in Space.
Yes, it's read my
Ark
mind.
in Space did body
Yeah,
horror.
exactly. It's so underplayed that unless someone physically points out, you do realize that's body horror, and they go,
Hmm.
oh shit, it is, you know, because I
Yeah.
think because of the way that they light it and the way that they present it. If Ark in Space was all done in shadows, it would be totally unwatchable because it would be the fucking frighteningest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. But
I've
it's a
always
studio
said that.
lighting, so we just see
I was
painted
just
bubble wrap.
yeah, I've got bubble wrap in my drawer the same colour, you know. Leave it alone. No, seriously, Royal Mail at one point, I had to send some packages from eBay, and you can imagine, I go into the post office, and there was just rolls upon rolls of green bubble wrap. It was a good day, but I'll tell you something, I have never had to explain why I need so much bubble wrap in my life, ever. I just went up with the reams of this stuff. Just, what on earth are you packing? I was just, oh, you know, bits and pieces. And then just thinking, it's nothing. It's just the exoskin of an alien from Doctor Who. It's not a problem.
And yeah, it seems cheap now, but going back to the idea of how the show represents kind of the evolution of not just about television, but of makeup technology, because they were doing things which at that time, I'm pretty sure the production people at the BBC didn't know they were capable of.
Oh, no,
And
they were making it up as they went along. Seriously, they were
yeah.
just, oh, we can do that. That's cool.
And at the time, Ark in Space was in production. Bubble wrap had just
It was
had
new.
just come
It was
out.
brand new. In
It
fact,
was
it was a wallpaper.
really.
Something I found out, and I could not believe this, is that however they make it, because it's so ridiculous, I don't know how bubble wrap works. It just appears on the shelf. But apparently, when it was first marketed, it was marketed as a wallpaper.
I mean, I could definitely see it being useful, especially with your kids, like as a safety measure, like maybe for
You can just
kids.
imagine the ADHD. You just, I've had a stressful day. You just start poking the walls and making it pop.
That is great too.
So
That is
that
great
works.
too. That does work, except that when you pop them all, then you have to
You
replace
gotta, strip it down and put it all up.
yeah,
Again,
strip it
yeah.
down again. But even going after the Ark in Space, that's just kind of how they operate. They were using whatever they had at their disposal to try to make extraordinary worlds, but also extraordinary creatures. But I will say, even going into the Sylvester McCoy era, you could see that they were really getting evolving and being ambitious. I will
Yes.
stand firm on this. The cheetah people in Survival are dazzling.
They
Like
are.
they
They're
look so
exceptional.
good. Especially the mask work that they did, the makeup on Kara and the rest of the cheetah people are insane.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
there's a lot going for especially the Sylvester McCoy era, because
yeah,
one of my favourite monsters is still the Herbivores.
the Hemivores from
Yeah.
Curse of Fenric. Yeah, that is a scary as hell episode. I will
Yeah,
defy anyone. That is a scary fucking episode.
now that was a proper.
Horror episode.
they
Yeah.
understood the assignment on that one. But I say this about horror in Doctor Who. This is a point that I just wanted to throw out here, just see what you make of. Is that it all depends on the sensibilities of who's making it at the time as well.
Oh yeah.
So when you had let's take Jumper, because when you had William Hartnell and Pat Troughton, especially when you get to Pat Troughton, they're all about monster of the week. Let's make this as balls out crazy and as super sci-fi as we possibly can on the money that we've got. And they did an absolutely beautiful, magnificent job. And I will die on this hill that there isn't one bad Troughton episode. Okay, so like fight me into it, please. I'm begging you.
I'm not gonna fight.
But when you get to Pertwee and Tom Baker, you have very controlled forces. You have Barry Letts, who was the more controlled one. You had Terence Dix, who was a little more sadistic one. He wanted to really scare the living daylights out of these kids.
Yes.
Barry Letts had to say, "No, Terence, come on, back, and they balanced each other out. But they came up with the Autons. Everything plastic in the world could kill you.
Baby. All right.
Seriously?
I already have a natural phobia of mannequins. I mean, sadistically, there's mannequins now that look like this. With a big gaping face. I still maintain they need to do that with the Autons where they come alive and they've got those faces.
Yes. Oh,
that would
like
be proper scary.
I would
that would
like,
be proper scary.
I'd like them to look a bit scary. But the thing is, you're quite right. Mannequins these days. I was in a shop in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. Basically, to get to the video game shop that I go to, you've got to go through a sports shop. Reasons why. And the mannequins are so good, is that I went up an escalator, and I thought there was something wrong because I saw a feminine figure sat with her head down like that, and being sort of curious, you sort of go, what's wrong? Says, no, it's a mannequin. Walk away, Matt. It's just thinking, I got suckered in by this realistic looking figure. I thought, if that thing starts walking, that's it. I'm off. You know, it's you just problem after this. But like I say, it's all down. But when you have Barry-lets and Terrence Sticks, and they balanced each other out, and they kept it. You know, sometimes they did push it. You know, like I said, they got complaints about why the police were scary. You know, which was Terrence Sticks. No, it wasn't Terrence Sticks. They okayed it, but it was Robert Holmes. It was Robert Holmes who got him into trouble. Now, when Robert Holmes was given Terrence Sticks his job, and you had dear young, God love him, the producer Tom Baker's first season.
Philip Hinchcliffe.
Philip Hinchcliffe, and he called him Paul. Why don't he call him Paul? I mean, I'm handing him my cards now because the mind's going. Philip Hinchcliffe. He wants to do something exciting, and Bob Holmes was apparently the most wonderfulest, nicest, sadistic bastard on God's earth.
Yes,
and he was just like, right, wash your hands, it's really done. You know.
Oh
and it's
man,
all
I was actually going
to. And what is interesting is that the horror elements do continue, but in very tiny ways after Phil Hinchcliffe and Bob Holmes.
Yeah.
Graham Williams went into the more comedic territories, but there were little moments, because I remember saying about a year ago or something, I remember this conversation very clearly. I said, I can't really think of many Graham Harper and Graham Williams episodes that I would consider to be very scary. Realising, of course, is that by some sheer fluke, I'd never seen Image of the Fendal.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just completely bypassed me, and I do not know why. So about a year ago, I sat down and watched it, and I was texting my best mate. Says, "How the hell have I missed this one? How?"
Yeah.
And it's probably one of the scariest ones that they'd ever done, because it did the whole bloody lot. There was cults, and there was aspects of body horror, and then there was, sort of the occult, and everything was in this.
Yeah, it had. Well, I mean, that was
gone under the radar.
It was like a Lovecraftian episode almost. Like,
as close as they ever got.
Yeah, about as close as I ever got to Lovecraft. Actually, it's great that we're talking about Philip Hinchcliffe. Actually, I have a great Hinchcliffe story. I met Hinchcliffe at Gallifrey 1 some years ago.
Yes. Now,
another thing that did go hand in hand, especially with Doctor Who, primarily during the Tom Baker era, and actually even going forward, the show was constantly being scrutinized and being policed by, I forget the name of the organization, but of course we never forget that psychotic little bitty Mary Whitehouse.
Mary Whitehouse, God love her.
Scary Mary.
Love her to pieces.
Despised the show. She hated. I think one of my the wonderful documentary for the 30th anniversary, More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS, actually had her on there, and she always hated the idea that. She hated the cliffhangers. She hated them because she always said
Doctor Who.
She hated the idea that children were having the image of something scary embedded in their brains for the next week. It's like it's called a hook. It's called the thing that gets them to come back to the show. But even more hilariously, and one day I'm going to do an episode just talking about the whole hypocrisy of moral panic, but I remember John Nathan Turner in that same documentary. I laughed my ass off. He said, like, sometimes in my prayers, I always hope that Mary Whitehouse would say the show is too violent because automatically that means we got 2 million extra viewing figures.
Yes, you know what? A lot of people say because John Nathan Turner said that, Louise Jameson said that, and I just love the idea of them going to a production meeting, and they say, well, how are the viewing figures? And they'd rattle off these numbers as, oh, by the way, Mary Whitehouse has just come out and she says that she hates this episode, and she's doing everything. They're all mustering to take us off the air again, and the entire table just goes, fucking yes! I love that idea.
So when I met Philip Hinchcliffe, I actually applauded him for how brave he was. Because I will say, one moment in one of his time, that one episode I love, principally because I love that the way he combines classic Gothic horror with science fiction themes. The Brain of Morbius is a personal favorite of mine. Gorgeous episode. Just amazing villain in the form of Morbius, but also Sullen, played by Philip Madoc. Great performance. But one moment is when Sullen shoots his henchman.
Yes.
And normally, now a lot of times in the show, whenever you see people get shot, they just react like they've been shot and they just go off screen. This one, oh my God, no, they had a full blown.
There's a chunk of his chest comes away.
A blood squib. I was like, that is actual hardcore blood squib going on here. And I was shocked. I was so amazed that the show was willing to go there. And even more so, and actually, I think Philip Hinchcliffe is a great prime. I think he really took the show forward in terms of how far they could, in pushing the envelope of what the show could do in terms of scaring the kids, because, that's what the show was good with, but also keeping adults engaged with the show as well.
Well, I think it's because that Phil Hinchcliffe understood what he was really good is that the producers are supposed to be good at understanding the way that the tonal shifts of the tastes of the public. Now, if they don't do that, then Doctor Who would still be the sort of be sort of happy floaty la la. Everyone's kind of all being nice and prim and proper. It wouldn't have moved on from the 60s. So the producers got to move the show in terms of the era that they're in.
Yeah.
And when you get to the 70s, we're into the hardcore Hammer era, and the tastes of the British public, they were changing. They were becoming a lot harder because we were getting a lot more hardcore horror by then as well. So people have seen bad stuff happen by this point. And I think what Philip Hinchcliffe thought is that we're not going to go too far because this still goes out at tea time on a Saturday, but we can do a damn sight more than what we thought we could do.
Yeah, which is impressive because backtracking to what they did during Pertwee's era with Barry Letts, the great thing I loved about the Pertwee era is that was really, even though social themes were prevalent going all the way back to Hartnell, Barry Letts just barreled on into it. And for all the people who keep claiming Doctor Who should never be political, I'm like going, cough. It's like, I'm sorry. There is not a single episode during the Pertwee era that didn't have some kind of strong political theme. Sometimes, you can say a little more subtle than others, but then there's some that they just balls out. Joe Grant's final episode, The Green Death, that's easily about the corporate machine and how it has absolutely no consideration whatsoever towards the environment. And the idea that we will, for all intents and purposes, kill ourselves for the sake of profit, and we will be the engineers of our own destruction because of our greed and avarice. And a lot of times we will surrender our free will to the corporate machine. And in that, and this is something that people don't give credit. It's one of the earlier examples of AI taking over, because the idea that the company, well, I mean, I'm sure there was some before that, but this one really hit because we find out that the big brains behind the operation in the Green Death turns out to be a computer.
Well,
and even then,
they did that back for the War Machines.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say even the War Machines with Wotan. Yeah, but they've been talking about the idea that the worry that technology will usurp us. And
Mhm.
Doctor Who talked about all that stuff, and it was always there, front and center. And they had no, and the 70s was that very socially conscious time period where people were starting to become aware of, or starting to really be vocal about a lot of the bullshit going on in the
Yes, they
world.
were.
So,
I mean,
and I love
I
the
mean,
fact that, and I love the fact that we had this doctor who begrudgingly had to work with the military, had to basically work with the establishment,
mhm.
and we had this great dynamic between him and the brigadier, where you see the mutual respect, but there's always that great conflict between them because of the way things need to be handled. The Claws of Axos is an amazing example of that.
It is very. Oh, the what thing is, what I like about the Claws of Axos is that it should really have it should have a subtitle, and it should be Doctor Who: The Claws of Axos, or also known as "For fuck's sake, Doctor," because he gets everything wrong. It's just like, Doc, are you absolutely certain about this? Absolutely, Brigadier. Couldn't be more positive. There's absolutely no way that these aliens are going to hurt us. Yeah.
Well, in his defense, though, well, I mean, because I remember he was giving Brigadier shit because the ship was about to land and the Brigadier was about to blow it up. And, well, yeah, I mean, sure, in the long run, Brigadier was right, but ultimately, are you really going to take the risk that you're right when I mean, are you really going to blow up a ship of what may be refugees?
Yeah, it's true, but there's a lot more elements of the story. It's like it takes the Axonite and then puts it into the that nuclear accelerator thing,
Yeah,
and
but
all of a sudden it starts growing, and the Doctor goes, "Oh, but it didn't. It wasn't. It was totally inactive until I activated it." I said, "Well, why did you activate it then, son?"
well, but again, he didn't know the nature of it. He
He
did.
didn't know
That's
this is the
well,
yeah.
that's the beautiful thing. Well, that is actually a beautiful thing about that episode is that it talks about on one side, yeah, normally we shouldn't be trifling things we don't understand, but simultaneously, we need to trifle in order to understand the true nature of something.
Yeah.
Because by understanding its true nature, that's how we are able to be better equipped to deal with a situation. Because, yeah, because unfortunately, the axons sell themselves as being benevolent.
Yes, they
And
do.
they actually, you could even say that the episode is kind of a satire of the way people sell a product and sell it as amazing, but not and we're so enchanted with the product we
Yeah.
don't think about the agenda that
No,
might
absolutely.
be hidden underneath.
Hmm.
And if you remember, there's a fucking obnoxious ass character who is like
Oh,
who works for the
Mr.
ministry,
Chin.
and he's yeah, Mr. Chin, who is like an intolerable
Oh, he was
bulbous
just
man who is so
him and the guy from the Ministry and the Sea Devils. These two should, if they ever get together, we are screwed.
yeah, exactly but that's like the whole idea is that the government is more obsessed with like their own material wealth that they don't
Mhm.
think about the fine line. They think of only what can benefit them. They don't think about the idea that maybe we should look into this, maybe we should make sure that it's on the level. And the doctor says no, we need before we even think about the idea of distributing this shit worldwide, we need to research this. Sure,
Yeah.
it's risky. I don't know what I'm doing, even though I'm going to claim I do, but it's important. And I love the fact that the doctor sticks to his guns. Yeah, makes mistakes, but in the end, we find out the truth. Yeah, the axons are
This
no
is
good.
yeah. Hmm.
And that's where I think the Barry Letts era was so brilliant is that hitting home the idea that a lot of times the horror isn't just about aliens. It really, a lot of times comes from human nature itself.
It does.
I mean,
Really does.
famously with the Silurians at the end of the episode, even though the doctor actually was able to try to come to some peaceful accord, in the end, the Brigadier still blew their ass up.
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
doctor was not happy about that.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's apparently they came to apparently the two characters came to blows over that one.
Yeah.
And the
So,
Brigadier's able to talk about because, like I say, the Doctor's exiled to Earth. Where the f are you gonna go? I mean,
yeah, it really was the only place he could go. That's, again, such a fantastic era of the show. I'm not,
was
yeah. I mean,
is.
but the other strength of the show, and I think the secret of its longevity is the fact that with every changing doctor and even changing regime, the show never stayed the same in terms of its tone or its
No,
aesthetic. And
always
that was
changed.
always, yeah, that was always to its benefit. And
Mhm.
yeah, for some people, some may, I myself don't really go back to the Davison era a lot. I always found it kind of be a little more dry, a little more serious for my taste,
I
but still good stuff in it.
Yeah, I say something. I I defend the Davison era more, especially as an adult, because I revisited Kinder for the first time
Yeah,
in
Kinder's a good one.
years. And I tell you what, I did as a kid. I wasn't too sure about it. I wasn't too sure about it. It didn't grip me. As a full-grown adult, you just think this is probably the best thing I have ever bloody seen. I wasn't fond of Snake Dance, which is the second
Yeah,
half
the
of the
sequel.
story.
Yeah, the sequel episode.
But Kinder itself, the Mara, that as a psychological horror, that was probably
Yeah.
the best in the business. That was the best thing I'd ever seen. I mean, I like the little magic tricks that the Fifth Doctor's doing, and he's really getting hold of being the Doctor. And the strength's coming out, and he's getting his bossy side on. But also, I love the Mara as a concept.
Yeah.
And that whole business of Tegan being in that black void, and the characters playing chess and everything. I just think this is just what drugs were they on, and does it come by the pints?
Yeah, one of my primary fears has always been the loss of free will. So the idea of someone messing with my brain,
Yeah.
Kendo was a good one on that in that regard. I mean, it was one of the few I really do think that Tegan got a chance to have some meat to actually play with because of what she goes through during the span of that episode. Actually, one cool thing when the DVDs were starting to come out of it, they actually did some makeovers, like to fix some of the problem effects. Because unfortunately, the one thing that did mar Kinda at the beginning was when they do the big puppet snake, which nowadays looks like those inflatable wacky weavers like on on the road.
It did have a certain carnival quality to it, yes. But the CGI,
Yeah, but
I just thought,
yeah,
they basically they've just tidied it up rather than, 'cause,
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, what I like, especially with that version, is the fact that they kept this design of the snake itself. I mean, funny enough, which I never put these two together, is that Mara is actually a creature from mythology. He says, I think actually, you know what? Let me just make sure of this before I put foot in mouth.
Yeah, actually, actually, as a nice kickoff from what you're talking about, another thing that Doctor Who does brilliantly is the idea of finding the truth behind the myth. So a lot of times their monsters do come from modern like just mythology, folklore, and the whole thing that they do, which is always wonderful, is always find or actually come up with a story that's all about the truth behind the myth. I mean, the demons is another reason why that's one of my favorites, is that it's about the Doctor finding out or actually saying like every single, and that was the first time I ever heard this concept, the idea that our ideas of magic is just advanced form of technology from other civilizations.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was such a brilliant concept, and and even though that episode is very heavily cult horror and even satanic horror to an extent, I love the fact that in the end the Doctor says it just seems like that, but because it's an advanced alien technology, it seems like magic to us.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, that's how they explained Arthur's ship in Battlefield. But that's another thing entirely. So Mara, if from what I'm reading, I've done a very quick Google search, by the way, but this is not deep dive research. But Mara is actually from Buddhist cosmology.
Oh wow!
And it's like I say, it's got several aliases such as the Evil One, Lord of Death, Tempter, King of Demons, Enemy of Enlightenment. I mean, seriously, if they did that, you're just thinking, well, I'll tell you what, season 21 would have been so much different.
Oh yeah.
And they've got powers of illusion creation, temptation, manipulation, desires, and emotions, control over an army of demons, stuff like that. And what I love is the fact that, because years later, I go to yes, it was Disney. It was Disney in California. Yes, it was. Yes, I'm just making sure because I've been to both of them, and it was the big Indiana Jones's ride. And what I didn't realize,
that's a good ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. The snake motif.
Yeah.
That's the Mara. So the Fifth Doctor fans in both me and my mate Ellie were sort of screaming because the actual demon that they were up against was the Mara. And I was just like, either someone has been researching this deeply, or there's a Doctor Who fan on board, which you find out at Disney had more than one Doctor Who fan on board.
Well, Yeah, there is a kind of sublime thing Spielberg has said. He always said the world would be a sorrier place without Doctor Who.
I like the idea that Steven Spielberg himself has actually sat and watched Doctor Who. I mean
Well, even
that's a session I would have just loved to have been part of.
well, remember, Amblin Entertainment did help produce
They
the
did,
TV
yes,
movie.
they
But
did.
additionally, a fun, actually a beautiful story. Around the time he was, writing episodes for the new series or for the revival series, Stephen Moffat was also co-writing Tintin with, and of course, which worked with
Right,
Steven
okay.
Spielberg.
Hmm.
Well, of course, they were going to all stay on to because it was supposed to be a franchise. They were supposed to do a second and third film, and Stephen Moffat was going to stick around to write all of them, but he had gotten the gig to run the show,
Ah,
and he was reluctant because he wanted to keep working on because you're working with Spielberg, and even
yeah.
more so you work with Peter Jackson. It's like this is next level.
Hmm.
But Steven Spielberg put his foot down, saying, "No, you're doing Doctor Who."
Really?
Spielberg kind of kicked it, like you know, turned him around, said, "No, the world needs Doctor Who. Get your ass out there."
No. So Moffat got the papal blessing from Spielberg himself. I like that.
Because Spielberg himself was, oh, actually, not just Spielberg, and we actually legendarily we all know Peter Jackson is so much a fan that he is still
Jackson's a proper nerd
desperate.
boy, yeah.
He still wants to direct an episode of Doctor Who.
I thought that was all. Do you know what? I thought that was all geared up because there was that massive video of him and Peter Capaldi and
Yeah.
Dalek. I thought, are
Oh
they
yeah,
announcing something here?
Oh, I still to this day would love to see Peter Jackson. Well, and who knows? Because I know Peter Jackson has been doing documentaries for Disney, and now that Doctor Who is with Disney, or at least is
I was
affiliated
just
with
say,
it,
I was just say, give Doctor Who to Peter Jackson, please.
Peter
For
Jackson could do
the
some
God.
wild stuff with it. I mean, especially with yeah, and even as a testament, I mean, Ben Wheatley, who himself has dabbled in horror
Hmm.
himself, he's directed episodes. Actually, he
That's true.
directed the first two episodes of Capaldi's Era,
That's true.
and yeah, so come on, bring those horror directors in, man. They could do some wild.
That's-
Yeah, we could do some cool. Hell, I'd love to see a Doctor Who episode. Actually,
Oh, I think I
every
think I know where you're going with this. Go on.
the actually practically every finale episode, including his final episode of the Capaldi era, were directed by Rachel Talalay, who directed Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare,
Yes.
Ghost in the Machine, and the absolutely amazing Tank Girl. So Rachel Talalay is actually, I think she might even be the first American to direct Doctor Who. I think we'd have to look that up, but
I'm not sure about that one.
possibly. But it's still insanely cool that this.
probably definitely in the modern era. I don't think there was any American directors during the classic era.
I'm not sure. I mean,
I would say Sidney Newman, but he was Canadian, so does that count?
well, no, see, yeah, Sidney Newman was Canadian. See, that's the thing I find fun. All right, I'm gonna be a little bitter about this because again,
Oh, go on,
I've
go
wanted,
on.
I've wanted to play, I wanted to play the Doctor, and of course, everyone's saying they're never gonna have a Yank plea, and I'm like going, okay, this is all right. I'm gonna call out an hypocrisy here. How many of our quintessentially American hero characters have we given you all with no complaint whatsoever?
Hmm.
Batman, Spider-Man, multiple times.
Hmm.
Superman, we have given you Superman a bunch of times.
Yes.
All right. And the one time you did throw us a bone turned out pretty good when you gave us Sherlock Holmes.
True. Very true. Now that
60
one
plus
that
year
one did
history.
surprise me. Yeah.
60 plus year history. You can spare us maybe 3 years,
Yeah,
to
that's true.
give an American a chance to show what they can do in the role.
I'd say there's a couple of Americans I'd love to see play the Doctor. I mean, I really would. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in that camp. Well, all right, there are two that our main weapon of surprise.
I mean, I remember for the longest time because his character in Sleepy Hollow was so Doctor-like. A lot of people actually said Johnny Depp would have made a great
Okay,
Doctor at
all
the
right,
time.
three. All right, I'll give you three.
All right, well, who's the other one that you were?
Okay, so because the thing is, I'm a very big Dan Brown fan, so I would really stick my neck out and I'd give it to Tom Hanks. I think he would be in that. And I tell you what, now hear me out before you throw me out, okay? people have got this thing about Dan Brown, and you've got Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons and stuff like that. Now, I think Angels and Demons would make a cracking Doctor Who story, because you got a strange scientist and there's a scientist companion, and they're after an antimatter bomb that could possibly holds fragments of what could essentially be the creation of the universe. And I'm thinking, okay, Dan Brown, if you convince me that you're not a Doctor Who fan, I'll call you a fucking liar. And everything about his stories has got this lovely fun, all this story needs is a police box, and we're on our way. And there's one of the later ones, Inferno, which is a great Dan Brown story, a good Professor Langdon story. And Professor Langdon's kind of got this doctorish quality. He's a bit Doctor Who. He's a bit Quatermass. If you look at it from a sci-fi point of view, so this guy could be either one of those two, no problem. And there was a scene, and it's in the cistern, and this woman's got the remote control to the bomb, and they have this wonderful sparkling dialogue, and it goes something along the lines of, if you love this planet, you'd do absolutely anything to save it. And Tom Hanks, without missing a beat, he goes, the greatest sins in this world are the ones that are committed in the name of love. And I'm just thinking, am I watching Dan Brown or am I watching a proper Doctor Who?
Yeah.
And it was just that moment, I was just thinking, you, sir, could play the Doctor quite easily. You've got the charm, you've got the humour, you've got he knows things that nobody else could possibly know. He can work things out. His brain works on a whole different level. And I'm just thinking he would be absolutely perfect. He could have his really quirky, he could have his Woody moments, and he could be sort of all silly and everything, and he could have his deep, dark serious, and then he's got the capacity to face off against a villain. I just think he would be absolutely magic as the Doctor. And and then there's
that'd be a choice.
And also,
if there's one nowadays, I'd say who would be wonderful. He's really good at being distant. He's a chameleonic actor. He's one who's really kind of disappears into his roles. And he's even got a movie coming out soon where he actually is playing up kind of a socially awkward character. Rami Malek, I think, would be.
Yes, yeah.
He would make a very interesting Doctor. He's got a very unique. First off, he's got a very interesting look, but he's really good at playing. He can either play a character who's really dynamic, but he can also play a character who's very reserved. And also, I feel like one thing that Doctor Who could bring out of him is a sense of fun that I don't think we really got a chance to see out of him as an actor. But I feel like he can really do something with it. But I think Rami Malek could do incredible things in the role.
Mm-hmm. And there's another one who there's two more on my list, which I'll do very quickly. Top of my list would be Benedict Cumberbatch. Only because, said, okay, what leads you to that example? Watch the first Doctor Strange film and tell me that is not the best episode of Doctor Who you have ever seen in your life. We all walked out of the cinema of that film, and we all said that was the best Doctor Who episode I have ever seen. And I just thought, you know what? You're not wrong. And there was this is a kind of under the radar one. I've just had to look his name up. But he was the scientist and the one who owns the machine in Person of Interest, which is Michael Emerson, and he plays he plays that sort of almost agoraphobic genius. And me and my dad were watching it, and my dad says, he's very Sylvester McCoy, he's very Seventh Doctor. And I'm just thinking, don't tell me about that, because I'll think about that now. And the more Person of Interest, you're just thinking, this kind of really almost inwardly shy but total dark genius. And I was just thinking he would be a lovely Doctor as well. But there's a couple of others.
Yeah, that's a fun. Couple others. We could go on all day talking about that. But actually,
that's a whole. Let's do a podcast where we rewrite Doctor Who. But they're all American actors.
Well, I know that there has been over time there was talk periodically of an American taking the part, but of course they naturally kibosh it because they keep saying Britain's only. British only.
I think it's so limiting because there are a lot of really good American actors.
Yeah.
That could do wonderful things for them. The thing is, there was a fan film, and I don't know where I don't know where he is now, and I hope he's happy. One of our contemporaries is Julian Bain. He did
Oh,
he
yeah.
did a Star
I remember
Wars
Julian.
Doctor Who a Star Wars Doctor Who crossover fan film called Hidden Empire, I think it was called.
I think I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, and I tell you something, he didn't try to put on the British accent. He just spoke as him, and he
I
was
remember
electrifying.
he
He
had
was
he had a
so
he
good.
really yeah. Yeah, he was excellent. He had a really great presence in the role. And I remember when I watched that fan film, I was actually really just taken by the fact that he just had a great presence
Mm.
in the
He was
part. And you're
smooth.
right. I like the
Oh,
fact
he
he
was
didn't aspire to
smooth as a
be
20-year-old cask, I'm telling you.
yeah. I mean, not like me, who after starting to watch Doctor Who, and actually by extension watching a lot of other British TV, I was practicing my English accent. So when I
But
took the
you did it
part,
so well. I'll say something. The best thing of your, and I will die on this hill. There was a moment which we've discussed about this before, and you thought it was just the most normal thing in the world, but to me it was so quintessentially British. It hurt. Is that you're running away from the chap whose mind was totally barbecued, and you're about to strobe him back into existence.
oh yeah,
And one of the escape routes is that you took was the women's loos. So the pair
yeah.
of you dash into the women's loos. You stand at the door and say, "You can't come in here." And I just felt everything that was British about me just went, "Oh God, that's perfect." And I will die on this hill because that was the most perfect moment ever. I'm thinking, why can't modern Doctor Who do this for God's sake?
I mean, well, here's the funny thing. I thought they were doing stuff like that. It's like, I mean, Tennant, because around the time we made that film, Tennant was really kind of coming to promise, and I really loved his energy, and I really loved his, and also, and actually, this is a good segue to get into talk about the modern series when Russell T Davies kicked off. And he openly said when he took the when he was taking the gig, Buffy the Vampire. So Joss Whedon, the works of Joss Whedon were really becoming very influential at this time, and Russell T Davies was a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm assuming he was a fan of Firefly as well, as
Mhm.
even nowadays with Joss
Well,
Whedon
Joss
being a
Whedon's on
problematic
record, he
asshole.
was a massive Doctor Who fan, so it kind of worked
Yeah. Oh
both
no,
ways, you
that's
know.
everyone he assembled to write for that first season either wanted to write Doctor Who or actually had written for Doctor Who. Paul Cornell and Rob Shearman they had written Big Finish audios, they had written new adventure novels. So and even Russell T Davies himself wrote the novel Damaged Goods. And meanwhile, on the other hand, you got Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, who they themselves were kind of a collaborative team, but Stephen Moffat, of course, wrote the wonderful Red Nose Day parody, Curse of Fatal
That's a
Death,
fatal death.
which is, and I've said this many times, the best parodies in the world are the ones where the people making it have nothing but love and affection for the thing they're parodying.
Absolutely.
Because of that, the jokes do not come off as mean-spirited. They do not come off as spiteful. They're
I
done
totally
with
understand
intent.
that. Hmm.
Spaceballs is one of the best parodies of all time because you can tell Mel Brooks loves science fiction,
Yeah.
pure
Which
and simple.
I never thought that science fiction would have been Mel Brooks' bag, but everything about that film is just so, like you say, there's so much love in it.
I've always said this about the very first episode, Rose. They obviously did the complete flip of what they attempted to do with the TV movie. In my opinion, I think with Rose and why it's such a great reintroduction to the series is that in a way it follows the narrative structure of the very first episode in Unearthly Child,
Hmm.
where they don't focus on the doctor. They go back to treating him as a figment of mystery. They
Hmm.
focus on the first episode strictly focuses on Ian and Barbara and their curiosity about Susan. In this case, it's about just a regular girl who just has a regular life, totally uninteresting. And then she just, from her natural daily grind, ends up stumbling into the doctor's world.
Hmm.
And because she becomes curious about it, we follow her in there. And
Yeah.
even more brilliant, and because that at this point you're dealing with the stigma of trying to engaged with a new audience, but simultaneously you still want to bring back the old. Another reason why that episode's brilliant is that they kick it off with a classic monster, but not one that you need to know this whole big mythos about.
No.
They brought back the Autons, and the Autons, when we see them, are just everything that we see in daily life, which is a testament to what I've said before: ordinary from the extraordinary
Mhm.
from the ordinary. And I showed that first episode to a friend, and they didn't really know the ebb and flow, but I was like, good, watch this. The second that first that shop window dummy, the first time that one starts creaking its head.
Yeah.
And even better, I love that the sound has them hearing the sound of plastic creaking.
Yes, yeah, I do agree with that one because I mean
Yeah,
the original Autons were a bit stealthy, which you like. Well, I say stealthy
Yeah.
when they're followed around with the wow wow wow, yeah, that kind of noise that could get on
Yeah.
your nerves. But the fact that it's almost like the sound of tinnitus in Rose. If you listen to the soundtrack or
Yeah.
you listen to it, is you can always tell when there's an Auton around because you can hear the tinnitus sound. It's like ringing in your ears. Like the fact that they brought the Autons back. I mean, there was a lot of criticism at the time. I remember says, "Oh, we're just ripping off Spearhead from space." And I'm just thinking, no, it's got nothing to do with Spearhead from space. This is a completely different beast. You know,
Yeah.
I kind of like that as well because you think, oh, they're going to find the consciousness and it's going to be this squid thing. No, it wasn't. It was a blob. I'm just thinking, oh,
Yeah,
okay,
big old...
they're doing something different here. And then
Yeah.
that's when they start opening up. Says, I fought in the war. You go, what war? And that's when you start asking all the questions.
Yeah.
And literally by the end of the episode, you just go, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was just the right amount. It fed, it enticed, it intrigued, it allured, and add on to it, you had a Doctor who, casting Eccleston was kind of a coup because he was a very respected actor, very dramatic, notoriously a dramatic actor. We'd never seen him do this kind of role before. No one knew that he was capable of actually having a bit of fun. Yeah, in the part. And while he was still very dramatic, very intense, there were moments where he could actually be, effervescent, actually a little bit of fun to him as well. But to kind of, but they still were able to carry through and have creepy ass episodes like The Unquiet Dead with the Gelth. And then, of course, the one that was a big old coup that pretty much declared Stephen Moffat's presence to the entire world.
Can't you see me?
I sent it to its room. This is its room.
Are you my mummy?
They were two of the best episodes that they'd ever done because, sort of screaming back to the horror kind of thing, is that it's all set at night.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who works best when the lights are very low. This is why there's a lot of 60s Doctor Who that works very well, is because they didn't want to light everything. In fact, if they could avoid it, because the more they lit, the more chance they had of setting the sprinkler system off.
Because what was it? They were filming out of Lime Grove. That's right. And I think for a lot of people, especially new audiences, I don't think they were really ready for that kind of horror being done in a show. Which, admittedly, the first season of the revival series did have farting baby-faced aliens. So,
but I think that was their 80s episode. It's just goes, go on, let's have a laugh,
Yeah, let's have a laugh.
Yeah.
But then you have this episode where and I love them, and even better is that it's an intriguing mystery about the horror of this character, and even better is that there's great scenes that show what this thing does to people, and it's horrific to look at. Just when you see Dr. Constantine's face turn into the first off, you see his speech leave, and then he starts saying, "Are you my mummy?" And then his face turns into the mask. I was like, that is horrifying. And even worse, it's just
that's a lovely bit of body horror.
Yeah.
Words you never thought you'd say.
The big black bear, the big black bear, blood. There you go.
A lovely bit of body horror, which again, that body horror, isn't it lovely?
Yes, just a little bit. So, and as a testament to how good the show was in terms of its production value, when they brought back the Daleks, now up to this point, the Daleks, even though they were like a mainstay throughout the run of the show, they themselves were running into a bit of scorn and derision and even mockery by people because, as times of diminishing returns go, people do tend to poke holes and think like, why were we scared of these things again? And then the episode Rob Shearman's Dalek happens, and I love the fact that the one brilliant thing about that script is that he knows about everything that we ever that we poke fun of the Daleks. That episode takes the time to say, fuck you. And I mean, like the first thing, what are you gonna do? Sucker me to death?
I was literally going to say that. It's like, the first thing they're going to say is, what are you going to do? Sucker me to death? And it goes, okay.
Yeah. And
but that's when they've had the technology to do something with the plunger. I liked it sort of screaming forward. I liked it when they went to Doomsday and they extracted all the information out of that scientist, and they just leave him a desiccated, burnt out husk. And
yeah,
I've never seen a Dalek do that before. That's bloody awesome.
yes. Yeah, and so for me, it was refreshing as being a classic series fan as I was. It really made me happy to see that no, the show still had the gumption to actually really still go hard into the horror when it wanted to, when it wanted to, that it was free to do that. And even better, because of at the time the production value of what they were capable of, we actually got to see things that obviously prior we weren't able to really see to the full extent. Because of Dalek, because that episode did such a good job really showing why just one Dalek is a bitch to kill.
Mm-hmm.
I think the greatest thing about the finale of that season is that when we see an entire legion of Daleks swarming, we're like, I kept that episode in mind when I watched The Parting of the Ways, and I'm just like going, oh, we're screwed. We're
Yeah.
screwed.
And
These things are.
Yeah, this is. I thought to myself the same thing. I thought, this is bad. This is not good. You know.
Yeah. And even worse, we find out that because of this particular strain's origin, they are also insane. Well, more insane than they really were. So actually, we didn't really delve in. I think a good thing to get into before we get further into like some of the, because I know people are going to want us to talk about some of the other popular monsters of the revival series.
This is true.
But we have to really talk about what it is about the Daleks that really makes them terrifying, like what they represent.
And the Daleks are the epitome of literally the fascist nightmare, because when they were written, Terry Nation, I think Terry Nation went on record and said that he hadn't any idea kind of what they were going to look like. He said, "I'm going to leave that to the designers," but he drew on what was essentially a recurring nightmare for the rest of the world. Because, like I say, post-war.
Yeah.
The big villains at the time were kind of a guy with a stupid haircut and a tash, and
yeah,
they're the representation of everything that is loathsome and evil about that particular organisation. And I to this day, I still think, in fact, considering the way the world's going at the precise second, they're even more terrifying than ever, because they could easily. Oh, as I say, it's starting to look horrifically the same way at the moment. It's actually really bloody scary,
Honestly, I would love it, because it's a rite of passage for every doctor to face the Daleks. It would be so scary if, when he finally does encounter them, there's an episode where people start embracing the Daleks, even though the Daleks are they're not doing anything to like sell themselves as benevolent, but the idea that people start rallying behind them in lieu of their flaws. I'm like, if you could find someone, a script writer who's able to pull that concept off. But the thing that just terrifies me about what's going on in this day and age is the fact that, Trumpty Dumpty, Elon Braun, they have done nothing to dissuade people from, they're not hiding who they are. They are showing that they are horrible, fascistic people who have, conned, they have manipulated, they have done horrible things in order to attain power. And even though they're so blatantly advertising themselves to be the monsters that they are, there are people in this world who are either so deluded that they are willing to believe that they're fucking Jesus, or even worse is that they agree with it. So I would love to see a Dalek story where we get into that idea. That would be the terrifying notion.
Yeah.
And I think the reason the Daleks work and still work to this very day is that we know that they are this unstoppable killing machine. No matter how many times the Doctor has taken them out, beaten them back, they kind of, to me, represent the quintessential evil of the universe, because even though you can always fight back evil is not something that can just be erased. It is something that is constant, and the Daleks, being the pure, undiluted idea of just pure racial cleansing, and that is something that you just can't get rid of. So every time the Daleks show up, I'm like, oh god, they're back again. But I'm at the same time, I'm like, unfortunately, they're always going to be there. Nothing can be done about that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. But then there was another monster that came out relatively during actually the end of Hartnell's time, which kind of, in a way, was the
Yes.
flip of the Daleks, but they're equally horrifying in their own measure. Was the Cybermen created by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, I believe.
Yes. Yes, it was. Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
And I, do you know what? I'll go on record and say I love classic series Cybermen up until about. Well, actually, anything black and white, and I'm there for it. I would.
I'm actually going to be generous. I actually really liked aspects of their design from the 10th Planet. I think my favorite
Mm,
thing, even though it's a cloth, spandex over their face, I love the way that they opened their mouths and the dialogue came out. I like that there was still vestiges of their human form
yes.
still underneath there. There was just something nightmarish about. In a way, it was kind of a progenitor to the Borg in that
Oh,
in that
oh.
regard.
Sorry. So you just.
Oh, I know where you're going with
Like,
this. I have a feeling.
I love telling this story. So, because you mentioned the Borg, I love telling this story wherever I get a chance.
Mm.
Is it was a story that I was told by someone very prevalent in the Doctor Who community. And they said it was this conversation we were just having, and they said, I said, you do realise that Paramount tried to sue the BBC over the Cybermen, and I was just like, what? And so basically, what had happened is that someone at Paramount had seen Doctor Who. It must have been the new series. Basically, someone said, "Well, that's ripping off the Borg." You know, have we said any permissions? I said, "No, nothing." I said, "Right then." So there was this very pleasant phone call, and they said, "We're going to be taking legal action against you because we feel that you've infringed on copyright against Paramount through the Cybermen, and you've infringed on copyright with the Borg from Star Trek." And the BBC, cool as cucumber, just went, "Okay, no problem. If your guys want to come and chat with our chaps, we'll sit down, talk all this out. No problem." And they diligently did exactly that. And and I swear to God, I hope to God this is true. So there's all these suits. They all walk in, and they present the case to the BBC, and their lawyers are there, and they listen to them diligently, and they say, "Okay, yeah, right, understand that entirely. We'd like to present our rebuttal of this," and basically went down and got the VHS of the 10th Planet. We would like to present this as our rebuttal of these claims. If you would care to spare us the time and watch this program, and they watched it, and about 4 episodes later, they all sort of sat there, and the lawyers said, "Okay, I don't think we need to take this any further. Thank you very much for your time," and they all fucked off.
No, see, you know what I love. You know what I think I would have loved to have seen happen is like, okay, so now here are the grounds for our countersuit against you all for stealing our idea for the Cybermen. So let's see, let's go through the list now, shall we? Just to like fuck with them. And the thing I find funny about that story is that they could have saved so many man hours of actually doing real legal work, like stuff that's actually beneficial to mankind, if they just did a goddamn web search.
I don't know how this whole situation. I just love the ideas that all these suits turned up, and then there's the BBC, whoever's dealing with the affair, and an intern and a VHS ready in hand.
Yeah, just at the ready to basically say, like, guys, you probably should have done your research before you got all outragey. Or as Joe Bob Briggs constantly says, Google that fucker. Let's go ahead and give people like a breakdown of what they are compared to the Daleks.
Okay, the Cybermen are. It's essentially it does what it says on the tin, literally. One assumes that they're humans, but they are cybernetic organisms that have replaced flesh with metal and machinery, and have supplanted all emotions. I mean, they're this utterly emotionless race bent on conquest and destruction, and they're bloody brilliant. Oh, they are so good.
yeah. Around the time they came out, they kind of the whole thing. I think the imagery of the Cybermen that makes me terrified of them is the just lack of emotion, just this complete absence of anything resembling humanity in there. And that's the core of them, is the idea that they were once human, but in order to survive, and in the beginning they only did it as just a means to survive their harsh environment.
Yes.
But they started kind of getting addicted to it. They started thinking, wow, this is making me physically better. Let me just keep adding to it. And they kept adding to it and adding to it until they finally just became these soulless metal machines that pretty much just that believe that because here we are a perfect organism, and all of us work together in uniform, to survive as we believe a species should. Everyone needs to do what we do. So they go out of their way to convert people. So at the time that they came out, it's very blatantly clear where the Daleks were obviously a parallel for fascism. The Cybermen were very clearly a metaphor for communism.
I had never looked at it that way before, but then again, I'm not the most politically minded chap in the world. So
That's fine.
This fragment I am taking as an education.
Yeah, so well, think about it, because the core fear that everyone has about communism, and it's a very rational fear. It's the idea that in order for people, and now it's altruistic for us to all want to come together to help our community and all work together as one. Great idea. But the problem is, in that mindset, you have to. It's not a matter of what you yourself want to do as an individual. It's about what needs to be done in service of the greater good. So in doing so, you have to sacrifice your own individuality in order to do that. So, and the people who give themselves to that cause basically sacrifice anything that makes them unique as individuals.
Yes.
That's the fear people have of communism, and it's a very rational fear, and we get that. And so that's where the Cybermen come in. It's like the fact that they represent like a caricature, if you will, of everything that we are terrified about surrendering free will for the sake of survival. Because what is the point of survival if you as a human being, as an individual with a soul, if you can't embrace life and enjoy life, what is the point of
about Cybermen? And at one point, I much prefer the 60 Cybermen. I mean, the 10th Planet ones are physically probably the most horrific, because under that cloth face, it is very clear that there is still something organic underneath. And Peter Davison said once in an interview that they were by far his favourite Cybermen, because even though I don't think he was supposed to, but if you watch what exists of the 10th Planet really closely, you can still see the glint of the actor's eyes.
Yeah.
There's a human eye in there. And the hands, they're still human. They're still human hands. And just thinking, there is whatever's left in there, literally screaming to get out, because they don't talk like we do. When they talk, it's the mouth opens
and then they close it.
Closes. So literally, there's shots out there somewhere of the Cybermen like that. And I thought, if you took away that white hood, that's a face. That's an emaciated face screaming. And I'm just thinking, that's enough to chill your blood.
Oh yeah, and I loved in Capaldi's like kind of closing episodes, World Enough in Time. I love that they brought back that particular type of Cyberman. And through the production value of the show at that time, they really were able to show us why they were such a impactful visual when it first came out, because you're right. I think it's just that horror of the idea that there's still a vestige of humanity in there. Now this is not to take away from the Cybermen as we do know them. They themselves have their own level of being, because they're also a big giant fucking Terminator who can basically crush you. And so they are also a much more formidable physical threat. In fact, well, I will give it to the 80s era Cybermen, especially with Kevin Banks, who consistently played the cyber leader. One thing they actually did have in the helmets was a translucent chin on there. And you could actually see the actor talking underneath there. And I love that, because again, given what we know about the Cybermen, it's almost as if the skull of the human that's still in there is still talking
Yeah,
underneath there. I was like, that's a scary thought
that
in
was
and of
that was a
itself.
nice touch. That was, and it was again, it was that silver look. So in case of whatever flesh is in there, it's practically dead.
Yeah,
It's anyway, but
yeah. But then actually and I got to give it credit to now. One thing I will totally throw a bone to the Chibnall era. Whenever he brought back a classic monster, they always, first off, they always looked great, but he was always able to showcase them in a way that really kind of reinforced why they're such a menace. When they brought back the Cybermen for, I think it was Ascension of the Cybermen,
mhm,
and or yeah, just those Cybermen episodes. When they brought
yeah.
them back, he was able to do some really interesting, terrifying stuff with them that I immediately said, like, I would not want to mess with that. I would not want to mess with that.
Yeah, I did like the idea of the the Cybermen heads that sort of self propelled, and
Yeah.
I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And what I liked about Chibnall Cybermen is that it was him pretty much doing Earthshock. In this case of right, we've got these Cybermen, we're gonna beef them up. But the one Cyberman I really wanted to see more of, because we got the Nightmare in Silver Cybermen from
Yeah, from that was
Eleventh
actually
Doctor.
they unveiled, that was a new type of Cyberman that they
That
unveiled
was the
for that
Iron Man
episode.
Cyberman,
Yeah,
which I thought was cool. You know, everyone was saying, "Oh, look, they're trying to be Iron Man." I'm just thinking, you lot are just never bloody happy. And I kind of liked them, but I'm still not fond of the they. Because the thing is, aha. I will scream back to the point that I was about to make, but something else has just clocked.
yeah, go back. Yeah,
What is intrinsically frightening about early Cybermen is that they stalked. They were silent as the fucking night. When they walk, because in the new series, when they walk, they're going ka-chunk, ka-chunk, you know, it's all pistons and hydraulics and everything, which I get on a logical front. You're thinking something
yeah,
that mechanical's got to make some sort of mechanical noise. I kind of get that. It was
yeah.
annoying, but I got it. But what I like about especially the about early Cybermen is that when you see them in the 10th planet, I mean, how they thought they were going to fool anybody by draping cloaks over these massive bulging heads and the pipes and everything. But they thought, you know what, this is going to... They probably looked at each other and go, this will fool them, honest lads. That conversation happened. This is headcanon. So they drape over these robes,
Yeah.
these blanket things, thinking that no one's ever going to... But when they walk, only the Doctor notices them. And they walk in a very human way, and they almost glide. And when you watch bits of the Moon Base and Tomb of the Cybermen, they are absolutely silent. Now, you imagine those stalking you through shadows. To a kid, that's shit your pants scary time, because you don't know
Yeah.
when it's that proper, you don't know what's round the corner. It could be a Cyberman because you can't hear the bastards.
Yeah.
Whereas you hear that ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk echoing down the corridor, you're thinking, right, they're up there, And but there was one moment. There was one moment in the next Doctor where the Doctor and Jackson Lake, they tear ass round the corner, and there were two Cybermen. The Doctor said, "Have you got your legs on? Silence!" I was just thinking, "Oh, Russell, you bastard!"
Yeah. Well, and this is, I think, a testament to how dynamic the Cybermen are. And actually, it's kind of cool seeing how they've, on a visual level, evolved over the years. Yeah, I mean, it's impractical, the idea that they're not exactly going to be stealthy, but in a way, much like a good zombie movie, the most terrifying thing about a swarm of zombies is that there's a shit ton of them.
Yes.
The idea of an entire squad of Cybermen marching in unison down a street, I would imagine that's kind of what probably a lot of people, especially in Germany during the World War II, or even people during the Blitz, just the idea of like a giant tank coming through, or foot soldiers coming through. That's, I think, the thing that makes that concept terrifying. Just the idea of an entire
imagery they were working on.
There's a great bit right before the cliffhanger of Army of Ghosts where the Cybermen just start appearing everywhere, and they say, like, everyone stay in your homes, and then cuts to a Cyberman just busting into a family's home.
Yeah.
if that ain't a great visual, like representing like the wars of being taken over by by any kind of tyrannical government, where soldiers will bust into your homes and you immediately claim, that's terrifying to me. And and that whole bit ends with this image of a kid just desperately probably just running to his room where he thinks he's going to be safe. And no, there's a goddamn Cyberman at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
I was like, that is effectively terrifying. Sure, yeah, they're not ninja like, or just ones where they move very smoothly, but the idea of a giant, emotionless machine barreling just down your street,
Be a safe space.
yeah, and it violating your safe space, that's a horrifying concept. So, whereas the Daleks, have a very single-minded approach to everything they do, I always found the Cybermen just interesting because they've actually done a great job evolving their look over the years, and even just I'm always in love with just seeing them come up with new and interesting ideas. And then you had during the Chibnall era, you had the lone Cyberman. I forget his name. He actually had a name.
Yeah, now
his was a fascinating character.
Yeah, he was a fascinating character, but his design of Cyberman was totally different to any other Cyberman that we'd ever seen. And I think
it actually felt very The Invasion.
Yeah,
it felt very
It was.
That's another one of my favorite.
That broad. It was kind of that midpoint between Nightmare in Silver and essentially the Cybermen. And I thought, where's these Cybermen? These are the bad boys I want to see.
Yeah.
You basically take the half that is still Cyberman, and you Photoshop, you mirror it, and you put it back together, thinking, "Where's this chunky motherfucker?" I want to see these bad, and you only ever see one. You're just thinking, well, why is there only one of it? Why is he literally the lone Cyberman? That's
he's the lone Cyberman, as you discover, is because he not only still actually retains some semblance of his humanity, the human inside is a monster. That's the thing the part I found. Yeah, that was an especially inspired notion, because of the idea that not only is there someone in there who still has the capacity to imagine and have human traits, but this is someone who unfortunately actually embraces his cyber side and actually wants to. That's even scarier to me. In a way, you could even say that that's almost like in a socialism kind of aspect where, the people who have paranoia about socialism, it's all about, I think I'm getting my isms mixed up, but I know I want to say, socialism is where everyone works together, but under one leader. But if that leader is a tyrant.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where the worry is that, sure, it's everyone working together as one, but being ruled over by that one person. Well, what if that one person's a sociopath? Yeah, and I think that's a nice, and it kind of makes me sad that they ultimately did kill that character, because I feel like he would have been a great mainstay villain for Doctor Who.
And I've liked him to have turned up, a couple of times.
Fortunately, the new series did not spend its time rehashing all the old characters, even though they did a wonderful job reviving a lot of them. They came up with some of their own, that pretty much changed the way a lot of people saw horror. And actually, for new series fans, a lot of them didn't even know Doctor Who was capable of a certain level of horror. Now, everyone's going to want to talk about the Weeping Angels, but I want to bring attention to one episode that actually had me crying from how terrified I was. Specifically, the Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit.
Now that's, you know what? That's surprising. That's not the one I thought you were going to bring up.
And frankly, more people need to talk about this episode, because not only did it have great, sci-fi horror like Alien, but it threw in serious philosophical discussions about the line between science and superstition. But there are moments in that episode that are purely psychologically horrifying. One sequence, and bear in mind, America did not get Doctor Who broadcast until actually not until the beginning of the third season, and even then there was a big delay from when it broadcast in Britain to us. So what happened was, I was watching that episode on YouTube, fans were uploading it to YouTube. And when I saw the whole "don't turn around" sequence.
But who are you?
I'm behind you, Toby. I'm right behind you. Don't look at me. One look and you will die.
I was freaking in my brain. I'm like, I'm putting myself in Toby's seat, and I'm like going, I want to look. I want to look so bad, but
Yeah.
he's saying, but it's saying, if you look at me, you'll die. And it's like, how can you tell someone to not look at the thing that may kill them? That is so, that rips you apart just in your brain because you're of two minds. Yes, I want to abide because what if this thing's telling the truth that I look at him and I'll die? But at the same time, I have to look, kind of thing. And they play that so freaking well. And the payoff is so good. Just the payoff of that sequence is amazing.
You do have a monster, and you do have sort of sub bad guys in these possessed ood, which I
Yeah,
know
the
I
Ood,
now
which are
I like the ood.
I love the Ood.
I've the especially when they did Planet of the Ood.
Yeah.
You talk about an alien species that make you physically fucking sob. Is
Oh God, yeah.
it just they tug at the heartstrings, really. But what I like about the Satan Pit, especially the Satan Pit in Impossible Planet, is the fact that the chief villain hasn't got a name. They call it the devil,
They call it the Beast.
No, the beast, the devil, and there was also that very teasing moment when classic Doctor Who fans got seriously blue balled, and we thought it was going to be Sutek, and it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
I just thinking, oh, Russell, you will hang for this.
See, it never entered my brain to think it would be Sutek. I just loved the idea that this episode was, again, teasing us with the idea that this is the truth behind the myth, that this is
Yeah.
the real bona fide devil.
Yeah, I think it's when when they mentioned the name being set, and as soon as anybody hears that, you sort of think, oh hell, oh. So I'm literally we're all making our own theories up there and there, thinking, oh my god, is this what's left of Festrus Iris and stuff like that? And it wasn't. But when you look at it properly after a couple of rewatches, is that you can call it whatever you like. The chief villain is the omnipresence of evil. To me, I've always what really attracted me to it was the fact that this could have been the force that's been following the Doctor since day one. Beyond day one, before day one. Because the Doctor, evil seems to know the Doctor. The Doctor knows evil. And
Yeah.
So to me, once you start doing that, you're thinking, oh my god, does this mean that this is linked to Fenric, who was also the embodiment of the omnipresence of evil? It doesn't have it can have any physical body that it wants because it can leap into any vessel that it chooses, but it's always there. You're not able to kill it and destroy it. So I say that evil's going to be back at some point. It's going to find another host.
And even cooler about the end of that episode is that they never give us all the answers. I love the fact that even the Doctor says, I don't know. They even address the fact that there's actually a plot thread that they never resolved. And I like how he says, like, I never actually translated that writing, so I'll never be able to understand what it is. Yeah, I never worked it out. And I like the fact that even the Doctor, someone who's always endeavored to explore and discover the truth behind everything, I like the fact that there's a line that even he didn't want to cross. Just the idea that there's just something, mysteries of the universe, that are just better left over there that I just should never touch. And it was such a fascinating way. It was such a wonderfully unconventional way to end the episode. It's an episode that really, as time has gone on, it pains me that no one talks about it in the same reverence that they do with a lot of other episodes, like one that we are going to talk about later.
I think it's because is that the nuances of evil, the way that it plays with Toby, and the way that it's only really sort of down your throat kind of I am the beast and I am here when he's in the shuttle and he's breathing fire and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's the only time when it's really sort of, but the rest of it's played so subtly that it doesn't sort of go up to the audience and go, I am evil, I am scary, bang. Not like other monsters who, once they're there, they will do everything to rip out your soul straight through your kneecaps, you know. Whereas this, the best scene in that is when the Doctor's trying to talk everybody is freaking out, and the Doctor talks them down, you know, and you know, he says, you know, it's playing on all those classic things, you know, fear and darkness. But that's how the devil works, or a good psychologist.
A good psychologist.
And I just thought, oh yes! I was so happy. Because
that's such a beautiful moment.
I am this great monster. I am going to scare you. Brr. It's a case of no. This thing is getting right in here, you know, and it's
such a great dissection of.
They don't react the same way to that. That's a very adult concept. That's the kind of thing that adults like. But as the show was predominantly for a much younger audience, they're going to latch on to the more sort of mile-a-minute kind of monsters, like the angels, the clockwork droids, the werewolf, and that, like that. But with them, what you see is what you get. Whereas evil can take on any kind of shape and form that you want, and for a kid, that's kind of like, well, that's fine, but what toy are we going to get out of that? Whereas with adults, they're just thinking this could go really wrong really quickly, and it's the kind of thing that would keep an adult up at night rather than what you call the target demographic. You know, I think that's the reason why, is because I think that entire story it's meant to sort of say, look, we understand that kids are watching this show and there's something there for the kids. That's why they got Ood with glowing eyes and they're kind of dot monsters. But this was definitely a Doctor Who intended for the adults who are watching the show as well. Like, we understand that you are being dragged along on this journey as well, so this one's for you more than anything else.
Exactly. Precisely. And and as much as I do love the fun, silly, honestly, I go to bat for Love and Monsters, which aired immediately afterwards, because it was a nice, fun episode that still had something. It did actually have something of value to say about the art of Rose and even Jackie Tyler. But I will say, when the show wants to be dead serious and actually have like human drama intermixed with powerful horror, actually season 3 is rife with a lot of great episodes in this regard. Actually, the Lazarus Experiment has it's actually a great psychological study about a person who has lived and has encountered so much horror in his life, and because he's like someone who has survived pain and horror, wants to just keep surviving and just keep living in order to enrich his life. But unfortunately, in his effort to extend his life, get younger, unfortunately, all he's basically done is just found ways to just perpetuate his suffering.
Yeah. Exactly.
Funny enough. And it's powerful like that. And unfortunately, in his effort to do that, he ends up turning into a life-sucking parasite because of it. Then funny enough, after that, another one, which is underrated from Chibnall, is 42 with yes, a very underrated episode underrated. And it's called 42 simply because the episode runs at a perfect 42 minutes, because that's like kind of the whole shtick of the thing. Yeah. Obviously, it was a play on 24, because at that time 24 was a popular series, but that in and of itself, I think it was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek play, because I know at this time the new series was always the revival series. I'm trying to get used to saying revival series now. It was coming under fire, but he's like going, "Oh, you're able to resolve the whole thing within a 45-minute runtime," and it's like, well, okay, let's give you a story that is all about resolving it in a 40-something minute runtime.
Got 42 minutes, and that's your lot, yeah.
Yeah, that's your lot, and I love that there was this ever-present ticking clock where it's like, shit's getting serious, and it's amazing what they're able to cram in the midst of that.
Yeah, well, it was very inventive. But again, that was, I mean, what I liked, that's what I call the Planet of Evil episode. Because the story threads were a little similar. It's the case of they found this energy source and it's come from this sun. But, oh, look, it happens to be alive and it's very aware of what you're doing and it's going to make you suffer. You know,
precisely.
Which it's not a copy. It's not a complete copy. It does its own thing. But it's just the fact that they just said, well, they took the basic building blocks of the story, But
Yeah.
again, it's that the evil itself. It's almost an elemental force. You know, again, you get a monster out of the mask, and whoever's inside the thing, and then you lift up, and then you get back
Yeah, such a
again. Yeah.
such a great visual.
I mean,
But
there's always going to be
the,
something visual there as well, which I think makes it sellable as a quite a horrific story. But to be honest with you, if you're going to go down that road, then when you skip ahead to the next season, you've got Midnight.
and actually, it's good that you bring on to that one because
Yeah.
that one being terrifying and 42 actually have one thing in common. I'll get into it. I actually met the director, Alice Troughton, and I told her, like, you basically made Doctor Who's Lifeboat for all intents and purposes. Just the idea of people confined into one location and you're seeing the true nature of themselves. And you're
Yeah.
seeing like the way people sell themselves one way when you see it, but then when they're confronted with something terrifying. Actually, no, yeah, it's kind of actually a lot in common with The Mist, where
Yes.
where
So,
again
yeah.
people are trapped in one confined and they're being menaced by something they don't understand, and you see their true natures come out, and that right there. But the core thing that between 42 and that one that made me really kind of uneasy is that both of those episodes feature the Doctor way out of his element, and actually, I mean, in 42 when he's actually being possessed by the entity from the sun.
It's burning me up. I can't control it. If you don't get rid of it, I could kill you. I could kill you all. I'm scared. I'm so scared.
Yeah. Now that was a big moment. Again, that was a very big moment because it's for the Doctor to say, "No, I am actually shitting the brick." That takes a lot.
Yeah,
Really,
and
that
Midnight.
really does.
And the thing about Midnight is that on one side he's worried about the deteriorating atmosphere inside that bus, but then here he is still trying to be clever. He ends up getting hoisted by his own petard when he ends up getting possessed or getting taken over by the entity
Exactly.
in there. So every time, so that's just again good writing because the Doctor for all intents and purposes is basically godlike. So you got to have those moments where the Doctor gets out of his element, where he ends up kind of stumbling into it and ending up in actual legitimate danger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, what I liked, thing is, I appreciate Midnight a lot more the older I get. Again, because it's one of those episodes. It's not necessarily aimed at the kids at the audience. It's like they're doing something for the adults who want something a bit meatier. And personally, I think Midnight plays as pure Lovecraft because it is a force that comes from a completely alien world of which they know nothing about, that can get right inside the head, that can induce madness, and it's the paranoia that everybody else, because you can easily say, "Oh, that's just humans being humans." It's, yeah, really,
Yeah.
that's
terrible.
I mean, to me personally, is that the bus or the shuttle or whatever it is, it's facing in one direction. I've always maintained that you got Cthulhu literally behind it, just glaring at it and sending everybody completely doolally. And yet this element, this force, just gets inside people's heads. It's a very you can always tell when Doctor Who's trying to be a bit more doing something for the adults because it becomes a lot more cerebral. They don't have to worry about something made out of rubber going blah like that. All.
Well, the best thing about the show is that even though they know it's a family, it is by and large meant to be a show to appeal to a family viewing. The best Doctor Who I've ever encountered are the one. Well, I always feel that you should never ever talk down to your audience. You should always. And even though I will say a lot of times fandom can be idiotic, it can be ridiculous, it can be stupid, I would always rather the people behind it make stuff that challenges you, because when good anything challenges their audience, even if they don't like it at first, it's one of those things where when they go back and they will actually come to the realization. It's one of those things where, hell, a good example for myself, I saw 12 Monkeys when I was like a middle schooler. I did not like the movie at all. Time passed, started watching more stuff, started learning things a bit more, went back to it. I think 12 Monkeys is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
And
You
that's
find
the thing
you
about
find
it.
that when you go back as an adult to things, with a
Yeah.
lot of things. 12 Monks is a wonderful example.
The cool thing about the Midnight in particular, a lot of people actually said Russell T Davies out Moffated Moffat with that episode. And a lot of people did not, and that episode was very clearly made specifically to just be because during the production of the show around that time, it was an intense show to make because you're making 13 episodes and and it all revolves around one actor that you have to make sure that they're available.
Yeah.
So they ended up making two back-to-back episodes where one actor is in one place and the actor's in another place because they sidelined Donna in that episode so focus on the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And that was deliberate because they needed David Tennant for this so that way they could have Catherine Tate to film the next episode, which is equally terrifying, Turn Left.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's but Turn Left is a frightening episode on a completely different level. I mean, completely. Now, I've always this is something in all the horror that I have ever watched. Some things could unnerve me. Some things as a kid have frightened me, but they're very, very, very base level. So something creeping in at the window, kind of. It's very childlike things. Totally, totally legitimate things to be worried about. But I've always said the most frightening things in the world, in terms of visuals, are the things that could be real.
Yeah.
And Turn Left, and I'll stick my neck out and say this, is that the last time that I was that unnerved, I was watching Threads.
Oh, dear God.
And I love that reaction every time you say that word. Everyone knows what you're talking about because
I haven't
sheer
seen the film.
bleakness.
I know about the film. I haven't seen it. I know about it, and the reason why I haven't watched it
you've
is
never seen
because I know
Threads?
about it.
Oh, John.
I know. Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Dude,
I know.
I saw someone review it on YouTube the other day because I'm always curious about how other people react to it. Grown men are watching this for the very first time, and they've come away from it just shaken physically.
Yeah.
And
I had a friend. Well, I had a friend in a previous episode tell me is that Threads makes The Day After look like an after-school special.
I mean, well, there's a whole slew of them. There was Threads. There was The Day After. And there was it Special Report? I think was another one as well.
Yeah,
that was quite a good one. But that was more the ticking clock anxiety more than anything else.
Yeah,
but
Turn Left had those moments. Well, had that moment where the world just goes to shit when the Starship Titanic crashes. And I think probably the moment in that episode that gets real is the people who Donna and her family are now refugees. They're forced to stay with this very upbeat Italian family. But then they get carted off to internment camps. And I was like, that is getting, and even worse is that Donna's mom is succumbing to despair, where she's just like catatonic at the end of it. I was that's getting real.
Funny enough, I went to a Doctor Who convention, and the Italian gentleman, I keep on forgetting, he's loveliest man ever. He went on to play the Pope in one of the 12th Doctor episodes as well, and he was just his lovely energy.
Extremis, I think.
Yeah, he was an extremist. I forget who the gentleman's name is. But anyway, that Italian actor, he was at Doctor Who convention. He was on fine form. He really is the loveliest guy you'll ever want to meet ever. And the one thing everyone's asking him, all the usual questions, and I said there's one thing I genuinely want to know. This is that it's a very powerful scene when the family's being loaded onto the truck and Wilf is there, and yes, I said that I totally get that you two professionals acting your hearts out, but there was a proper tension there. Like say, Wilf was close to tears, and you were sort of holding something back. And he said very simply, mate, because we were there. Bernie Cribbins was he would have been doing national service, I think, at the time, and so it's an era that they both came from. He was only a kid at the time, but they were able to channel those real world fears of World War II. Again, we keep on coming back to a true time of true human horror because it was real.
Well,
And
the thing the
you know,
yeah, the thing that unfortunately Americans tend not to think about is the fact that Britain was the front line.
it
They were
was
the first, as the doctor said in The Empty Child, he said, one island stood up and said, "Fuck you.
yeah,
No, we are."
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, he said, and yeah, that's the thing people tend to forget about is that Britain was the first people to step up and say that
It's
we're
not
not
like
gonna,
no.
yeah, we're not gonna give in. I mean, the part of me wondering is like if shit really goes tits up nowadays, I'm wondering what nation is going to be that's going to step up now. Personally, I think it's going to be Mexico. Uh, um,
No,
yeah,
it's a discussion
yeah.
I can't even
Well,
face it
that's
now.
a discussion
Yeah,
for another day.
yeah.
But even actually going into the Moffat era, the one thing that they always seem to want to bring things back to that moment, because I will say it was you could say it was probably one of Britain's finest hours with the fact that they were one that stood up against tyranny, and actually, and I always a lot of people actually even call World War II the just war because it was basically people getting together to fight back evil.
Hmm.
I think it's the one time I think in the history of war where war actually served some kind of important purpose for the prolongment of the human race. Um,
Yes,
that
yeah.
yeah. Now, granted, the way some aspects of it went about, America, dumbasses. Yeah, what was it? There was a great Robot Chicken sketch with Little Hitler.
What's going on here? It's not my problem. Now it's my problem.
Little Hitler, I'm too risky.
So, yeah. I've never seen that one.
It's a great Robot Chicken sketch. I actually go like, well played, Robot Chicken. So let's kind of, but and actually kind of going into it, if there's any writers on the show that really kind of kept reveling in that, it was Moffat and Gatiss. They always seem to take a lot from that era in a lot of their stories,
Mhm.
especially when Moffat took over the run. I mean, heck, we had Victory of the Daleks immediately afterwards,
Yes.
kind of talking about, and I think it was that what if a Dalek was involved in World War II, like what would happen there? And it's like,
Because the thing is, a Dalek working for the Allies, I
mm,
think, was probably the safer of two choices. Because I did read somewhere that there was an idea to have the Daleks of the SS, and
oh,
they would have
I still
basically
think they
been
should do that.
they basically would have been NSD Daleks, new series Daleks, in Genesis colours, which were the greys of the German tanks and weaponry, and they would have been the weapons of the SS. But I think again, there's nothing more terrifying than a Dalek speaking German, which we got with
Exterminating.
Exterminator. I mean, there's a friend of mine who's very very fond of German culture, and he
Yeah, there wasn't
he
actually a
put
word for exterminate in German.
no,
I
yeah,
think, if I remember.
that was actually that is legitimate German, and he said, you know what, Doctor Who doesn't ship me up very often, but a Dalek in Germany, an exterminator, is probably one of the most frightening things he'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just imagine, Nazi Daleks, always, as Davros would call them, Daleks,
Yeah, just Daleks. Yeah.
Because, it's like Daleks going way back to basics. I mean, that's a frightening concept of itself, but I did read somewhere that whole idea of the Daleks working for the Nazis, that was kind of mooted, and the BBC just went, no, Mark, you can't do that.
I still want to see them do that one day because that would just be a terrifying concept.
It is something that we were going to do as a fan film at one point,
Mm.
but at that point, the social awareness of the internet was starting to really take hold, and everything was offending everybody for no other reason than it existed. And we basically turned around and said, "Look, it's a great idea, lads, but." No, just nah. Yes, so someone else can do it. They can get the applause, or they can get the shit kicked out of them, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah, some people. Well, a lot of time, and sometimes I'm the guy who always says that if it's a story that you feel needs to be told, then you should probably tell it. Actually, when James Moran, who wrote The Fires of Pompeii and the Torchwood episode Sleeper, and also he said something very powerful to me. He said, like, listen, sometimes a story takes you to a place that yeah, it's not a happy place to go, but if you feel it's the right way the story needs to go, then you have to do it. Of course, we were talking about the hilarious bit in the episode Sleeper where the baby gets run over by a car. So yeah. So let's go ahead and try to, because I know once again, Doctor Who fans are probably listening to this, like going, when are you going to start talking about the Weeping Angel and all that? Like, okay, we'll do it now. We'll talk about
Here they are. Here are the
Here they
Weeping
are.
Angels.
Oh my god, it's turning out the light!
Quickly!
I can't find the lock!
Sally, hurry up! They're getting closer, Sally, come on!
Ta-da!
But I'm going to do it in a way to kind of encapsulate, because we're going a while. But the one thing about Moffat specifically that Moffat does, and it's going back to what Perp we said about the idea of regular things becoming terrifying. Moffat has a sublime gift of taking the things that we see every day, like actual things, and making them terrified. It's very clear he's a person who looks at something and goes, yeah, I can make that. That
I can do that.
affects me in a way. I'm going to kind of show you why it scares me. So he does these amazing things where he takes the statues which I've been to London and I've seen, like, you all have statues up the wazoo at that place. And I love the final montage in Blink where it shows all the different statues. So he just takes the statues that he sees every day and he's like going, yeah, and they're so commonplace, we don't pay attention to them anymore. So what happens when we stop paying attention to them? Hell, then just one season later, he makes the dust floating, the particles of dust floating in the sun. He makes them little piranhas.
Yeah. Now I got to admit that was a stroke. That was another two-part, an absolute stroke of genius.
Silence of the Library and Forest of the Dead.
The Vashta Nerada. I like the Weeping Angels. I much prefer Blink over. I like a single Weeping Angel rather than an army of them. Because
I mean,
that's
I'll give it to.
It's the thing that chases you. You know, it's that thing of it could be outside the window, and then next thing you know, it's out the front door. Then it's in the front door, and then you never quite know where it's in. You're playing cat and mouse with it. That's what I really loved about Blink, because everything was literally on a hair trigger, and it was like Doctor Who doing jump scares, which was quite a novel thing for them to do. You see. Whereas when you got to the Matt Smith episode, and then all of a sudden you see the angels' heads and they're moving as normal, I'm just thinking, no. Let's wind it back to what we know. And then it got even weirder, and all of a sudden the Statue of Liberty is an angel, and I'm just thinking, too far.
Too far. But at the same time, though, when you're in New York, people, the Statue of Liberty is background to the point that but then again, it is also a tourist attraction, so it's kind of hard to believe that people would not pay attention.
I was going to say there's someone still, even if it's a disgruntled pigeon, someone's looking at it,
Yeah.
But
now,
what I did like, go on, so.
Well, I was going to say, as a testament to how potent Blink was, and especially how amazing the direction was, I believe it was directed by Douglas McKinnon. No, Hetty McDonald directed Blink.
Yes.
So there you go. Horror always does great with women directors.
It's like someone knows their business, knows their job.
Hetty McDonald directed an incredible episode as a testament to how potent and how well directed and how extremely well visually recognized or created they were. Again, I was watching this on a little YouTube screen, and the one part where Larry, is like staring at the angel, looks away for a second, and then just does that amazing cut with the angel like right up here. I leaped back.
Yeah.
I leaped back so hard. And he's only, and it's not even like it's just there it is.
It was expert. I'd say the thing is the episode where the Statue of Liberty's the Angels Take Manhattan, I think it's called. I wasn't fond of it as an episode, but what I did like was the little weeping angel cherubs.
Come on.
that was that hit a little differently. That did because thing is, once you've got Blink, you kind of you get the Weeping Angels, you get what they're about, and it is a question after that of finding different things to do with them, because a monster like that, well, once they're unveiled and you have that extremely wonderful episode, doing something new with them and something that's interesting with them can become a bit of a challenge, because they can just fall into this, they turn up, blink, and then they're there, and then blinking, you're dead, that sort of thing. What I liked about the cherubs is that they're so small, they can literally, they're like the stealthy little infiltrators, because you won't necessarily be looking for them, and they could be sort of like, you're looking in general directions, your peripherals are keeping them time locked, and then you look away and then they're gone, and it's that thing of, what was that out the corner of your eye sort of thing. So that's what I appreciated the most. But the thing is with Angels is that you've got to keep on finding different ways to not necessarily reinvent them, but find different things and facets.
Find new ways to make
interesting.
And we got to give love to, and I'm going to keep giving love to Chibnall when he did have the Weeping Angels on there with Village of the Angels.
Yes.
They did things with the Angels. Yeah,
they took some. That really was back to basics, I felt. But again, there was a lot of angels, but it was enough rather than a whole planet and full of these things, which I thought was a bit overkill. But to go back to that initial Matt Smith episode, what I did like is that they could take organic components of a human and then use that to communicate and speak.
Yeah,
and that there's a lovely moment where they say, "Doctor, what's that sound?" And it's the angels laughing, and it's moments like that you just go, no. You hear that, but if you hear that in an English village where it's all foggy and Vincent Price kind of territory, that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing I like, and the fact is that they can be used by other species as well. I mean, not used, but they can be. It'd be very simple to make a bargain with a Weeping Angels. Look, you work for us, and we give you all the souls you could ever possibly feast on, ever. So they give them a whole village. It's a case of, to me, that's the Angels are going to say, you know what, that's what we've got a bargain.
The Blink was a very powerful episode, and actually, for a lot of people, like I've actually had a lot of friends who say, like, oh yeah, I know about Doctor Who. I didn't really have interest until my friend showed me Blink. Like that always seems to be the episode people always say. And and the funny thing is that was another episode that was made again because of the production episode. It's like, we need to fill this slot. Unfortunately, David Tennant and Freema Agyeman were not 100% available for that episode. So they did. And even though it was not well received with Love and Monsters, friggin' Blink came along and showed and actually Stephen Moffat adapted it from a short story that he did for the Doctor Who annual. I think, if I remember correctly. I think that's what it was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it was one of those. It was for the Doctor Who annual. It was like an illustrated story about a little girl named Sally Sparrow. In fact, the whole opening where she's peeling away wallpaper with messages from the Doctor was from that initial story.
Oh, I'm going to have to look this up because.
Yeah, you have to look that up. Actually, one episode that Moffat did, which gets so badly attacked, and I have fought tooth and nail in support of this episode, because to me, I think it's beautiful and it's poignant and it's important, and it also plays again to the idea that monsters in Doctor Who are not 100%. It's not always about whether or not they're evil, and the Doctor isn't always out to stop monsters. A lot of times the Doctor wants to understand monsters. He wants to understand something. But an episode to me that I think is so vitally important and has so many multi-layered themes to it is the episode Listen.
What is it?
Imagine a thing that must never be seen. What would it do if you saw it?
I don't know.
Neither do I. Close your eyes.
What?
Close your eyes. You too, Clara. Give it what it wants.
I love Listen.
So,
oh my goodness! Now that is I will die on this hill. It's one of my favourite 12th Doctor audios. No, not yet.
Yeah,
so, we're not doing 12th Doctor audios just yet. As I was a big fan of that episode right from the word go. Because again, I like the fact that we didn't know what the hell they were up against. Now, I personally think they were up against several different things because you had that thing at the end of the universe, you know, and then you had the thing at the kids' home. I still say that there were two completely different entities.
Yeah, I'm willing to believe that too.
But because it was so well done, and and the thing is, Peter Capaldi doing that whole opening thing of talking to himself,
talking about. And
I must say, I sat there and I said, "This is proper Doctor Who. This is what I like."
Yeah. See, the big thing about the episode that is important to me is that, yeah, like you said, in this opening speech, the Doctor is basically talking about nature and how every species on everywhere has a capacity to adapt in order to survive in their own way. And he's like saying, well, what if there is a entity out there that pretty much has the perfect hiding that could hide anywhere? If it was, hell, it could be behind me right now and I wouldn't even know it. That's the whole point of it. And the whole thing the Doctor is trying to do is weed the creature out because he needs to understand it. Because the key thing people don't understand about Capaldi's era, especially in his first season, it is about the fact that he doesn't really know who he is. He doesn't know what he is. He doesn't understand himself. And this episode is about him trying to whittle himself back to a key moment from his childhood, a moment that was very powerful for him. And in his analytical nature, he's thinking, okay, there was something in my room that day that actually, in a very compassionate way that I can't understand, grabbed my foot and gave me words of encouragement and actually was a major important bit of inspiration in my life to keep moving forward from there. And the Doctor needed to understand that. What people just don't seem to realize that the Doctor was barking up the wrong tree the whole time. He was seeking out some creature that just had perfect hiding. He was trying to understand that. And the other thing people just is everyone's like saying, well, this thing's a killer. It's like, really? When did the thing kill anybody? The thing doesn't kill. It just thrives on the fear that it causes.
I dare say, I think it's the only episode where nobody dies.
Yeah. Well, Empty Child, Doctor dances.
Yes, yeah, no, that's
well, remember, Doctor has this whole everybody lives at the end of it.
But it's the fact that nobody sort of is, because that's a bit of a cheater. Yes, everybody lives, but there are a couple of people who ended up dead and then were sort of Uno reversed. Whereas we listen is that you can have fundamentally frightening or unnerving ideas and moments, but nobody actually cops it in that episode.
Yeah,
which I think is really, really rare.
Yeah,
and again, do you know what what I absolutely adore about listening? Again, it's always about these little nuggets of writing. Is that again? I would stick my neck out. Is that was had a bit of a Lovecraft thing going on about it because again. It was all mood. He hadn't the foggiest notion what he was looking at going out of that airlock. You have no idea what was underneath the kids' bedclothes, And I think he was trying to appeal to the two audiences as well. So there's something for the kids to be frightened about, and there's something for the adults to be sort of unnerved about. And what I like is that I do like the Lovecraft sort of storytelling. Is that you could go through the entire story and you can imagine the target novel. It says it felt this, it felt that, and the moon was gibbous across the celestial stars and things like that.
Yeah,
but I must admit, when I watched it, I was just like, "This is the Doctor Who I've been waiting for." He's feeling his feet as the Doctor as well, and I think this one, and. It's a hot take, but I do really like the Night of the Forest as well, because as far as I'm concerned,
in the Forest of the Night,
in the Forest of the Night, they're the two episodes where the Doctor becomes the Doctor again. He sort of snaps himself out of whatever slump he was in, and he's sort of like, no, this is me. This is what I'm capable of, and you're all in trouble.
Yeah. Actually, another one from the Capaldi era, which yeah, also was especially terrifying, and on a visual level, just extremely well executed. Flatline.
Yes, but again, that
Yeah,
was another one where the Doctor, he
the
accepts his
doctor's
role.
incapacitated, and
Yeah.
Clara actually has to figure shit out. I mean, and beyond that, there's also just wonderful classist undertones to the story as well, which I thought was especially great. The
Yeah.
idea, well, in a way, you could say that. Well, the doctor calls him the boneless. I just say, dude, call him the flatline. That's what I like to call him.
That's what I
Um,
thought. That's what he was going to call it, and all of a sudden it's the bonus. I just thought, really, you could have just called it the. Yeah.
Bones really don't. I like calling him the flatline. But anyway, it's that idea of you could say that this whole thing is just a metaphor for the idea of creatures that have absolutely no dimension to themselves, basically just
Mm.
are parasites that just kind of suck. And he says, like, you all understand us. You just are just a monster who just wants to kill, and just because you have no inner dimension to yourself. You have no soul. So you just kind of suck off of everyone else. So it's that idea of people who it's the idea that in society, people who are like powerful or who actually have control over life and death always seem to want to stifle and destroy people who have creativity, who are actually like, well, you have Rigsy, who is a graffiti artist and he's made
Hmm.
beautiful
Yeah.
murals, and then you have that one asshole who unfortunately lives at the very end, who only looks at it as graffiti, and it's like, it's art, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
But
And
because he's like of the council, just he with his own pathetic little speck of power,
mhm.
wants them to wipe it out. So that
And
in the idea of the boneless is that they are a creature that is flat. They have no discernible feature. They have no identity, and
mm,
they feed off of everything that is unique in the world, and uh, just do horrible things to them. I mean, the whole sequence where you find out, actually, the whole cold open to that episode is that's another thing that the news the revival of Doctor Who does really well is they do in horror movie terms, they do the cold open like
yeah,
before the credits. Every time they
yeah.
do the cold
The
open.
Doctor Who's all this is the Doctor Who's always been good at the cliffhanger, and so
Yeah.
they took the concept at the cliffhanger, stick it at the start, and they just literally rewrote how to do the cold open.
And Flatline had a great one where the guy gets taken. You don't really see what happened to him, but then you see, and they do that great optical illusion thing where you see that streak on his wall, but then the camera tilts
Mhm.
to another angle, and then you see him like screaming
Yeah,
flat up against the
I,
wall. I was like, that
I
is brilliant.
that was
Um,
good, but do you know, I still say the best. If we're talking in terms of horror, I still say the most chilling one, and still my favourite, Cold Open, literally comes from the first series of the Unquite Dead. When
yeah, just that whole
I
opening.
just
Yeah.
the whole opening where you got this sort of possessed zombie figure and the screams and the wailing, and then all of a sudden the scream of the title sequence. It's into the title sequence, and literally I remember those 3 weeks of those first 3 episodes. I remember them so identically. I used to work at a supermarket, and literally where it was. This was at the time I could move at speed.
Hmm.
It'd be a case of, right, I'm going there. But Matt, when he says, no, I'm going home, and that was it. I clock out. I didn't care if I was going to get a bollocking. I did not care. The first episode of Doctor Who was my nan and granddad's anniversary. We were going out for a meal. So I was just like, no, I've got no time. I'm going home, watch Doctor Who. Then we were literally, as the credits are rolling, I didn't even catch the next time trailer. We were out the door, and I was just like, we recorded it, I had to watch it later. Then there was End of the World. I remember everything just stopped. So I've got to get back because Doctor Who's on. And they just said, but Matt, we want you to. I don't care. And I was already at the door. I just got so told off at work. I didn't care. He says, you are not taking this job seriously. I've got better things to worry about. So fuck you. And I remember seeing the next time trailer for The Unquiet Dead. And I said, I have got to be. Everything was against me that day. And I just threw down whatever I was doing. So like 5 o'clock, I'm off. And the thing is, it was in summer. I do remember when it came back. the nights were really light, so literally I knew this was going to be a spooky episode. So I thought, so I literally closed all the curtains, shut all the lights off. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm going to feel this." And leave me alone. I'm having this moment. You know, I don't watch telly for the rest of the week. This is mine.
Yes.
Literally, that whole opening, and I am literally sat there just going, because I thought it was the most perfect thing I've ever seen in my life. It was so
Excellent.
good.
So good. So wow, we're getting on here, but
I was just going to say whole swathes of empires have moved
yeah,
on.
I mean, but when we're dealing with a show with a 60+ year legacy, man, there's still so much that we can break down.
It's not possible.
Break down here. I mean, I suppose the best way to really bring everything together is that if there's one time that the show tickled into this idea, and funny enough, they alluded to this idea back at the end of Trial of a Time Lord when we found out the truth about the Valeyard. If there's one thing, that one episode in the revival series that really I never thought I'd ever be, the Waters of Mars, actually, despite how horrifying the flood was, I never thought I'd ever be scared of the Doctor, but that's the one episode that made me scared of the Doctor.
I did wonder if you were going to touch on this, because it was the time, because I remember the conversation. I say a conversation. It was more. It's whenever you're watching Doctor Who. I don't know that you do this, because some people like to watch in total silence, and the rest of the time, the rest of us were making these little "oh shit," "oh god," "oh no," and literally, me and my mum said exactly the same thing, exactly the same time. Is that all of a sudden the rockets exploded, and there's devastation everywhere, and all of a sudden that's when his brain clicks in and goes, "No, I'm the last of the fucking Time Lords. This is and that whole section.
The laws of time are mine, and they will obey me.
Obey me. Now that bit was him sort of saying, "Right, I am done with this shit. I am fed up. I will. I'm going to save you lot. I do not care, and whatever happens, I will deal with it." The frightening bit was when he took Adelaide back to her house, and she's squaring up with him, saying, the Time Lord Victorious is wrong.
And if my family changes, the whole of history could change. The future of the human race. No one should have that much power.
Tough.
And both me and my mum both said, "Oh, he's gone dark side," which I thought, "Oh my God, are they going to do this? Is the Doctor going to turn to the dark? Are we going to get a shadow of the Valeyard?" Which we did for about 3 seconds, and then all of a sudden, "Oh no, what have I done?" And I'm just thinking, "Oh, for fuck's sake, have the balls to carry this on,"
Well, it would have been a little late in Tennant's era, because this was the penultimate episode before his last episode.
Well, it could have been a hell of a redemption arc. It could have been a hell of a way to go.
I mean, personally, I think this is something they could probably tickle on for an entire season. To be honest, I would like it if they did it for an entire season. But even then, I still applauded when I ran into Phil Ford, who was the co-writer of that episode. I applauded him. I was like saying, "You had the sack to make us actually scared of the Doctor," and that was a pretty ballsy move. And he actually said, like, "Yeah, that was actually the most positive bit of feedback we got about the episode, was that we went that far." And it was spectacular. And again, that's actually one like Impossible Planet Satan Pit that doesn't get talked about nowadays as often as Blink or even we haven't even talked about like The Silence. Like, people don't talk about them in the same breath like they do, or like talk about these episodes the same way as they talk about those.
Yeah.
But so I guess to kind of bring it all together.
60 years, several hours later, trying to bring it all into one thing.
60 years later, and the show is still coming up with new ways to freak us out. I mean, in this last season with Nshudi, they did there was the episode the 73 yards, which
that was exceptional. That one caught me off, because that was the turn left episode, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly, but it's the idea that they are still, and the great thing about the show, because it can go from different tones, from being funny to being dead serious, they can just have fun with comedy monsters. We can have silly monster episodes if we want to, but then like, and sometimes that's great that they do that, because then they'll turn around and have something uh legitimately scary and that audiences aren't ready for. I
Mhm.
mean, even episodes like Night Terrors from the 11th Doctor
Yeah.
era. Actually, this is a good one. Actually, this is a good way to kind of wrap it up, because Night Terrors does exemplify something. And I read an article about it in Doctor Who magazine. Mark Gatiss actually said the whole intention of that episode was meant to represent the experience of a child when they discover Doctor Who for the first time, or basically kind of like the experience of Doctor Who through the eyes of a child, or just how
Yeah.
scary the world is through the eyes of a child,
Mhm.
and how a lot of time, and how important it is for parents to be there for their kids when they're encountering those kind of horrors. And that episode really does kind of get real with all the things that do scare us as a kid, like
Mhm.
stuff in our closet, just the darkness,
And it
even
was
just
playing
our
on
own
those very real
environment.
fears that I talked about earlier. Of
Yeah,
is there something outside my window about to try and come in? It does play on all those little
Mhm.
nuances that the
Yeah.
things that scare you as a child. Yeah, I totally agree.
And then this child meets the doctor, and the doctor is that hero that we as kids needed to have, just that one who comes in and actually helps us like want to confront the fear. But in the end, I think the thing that's really brilliant about that episode is that at the end of it all, the thing that saves this kid is not the doctor. In the end, it's his dad. But because the doctor has the gift of being able to make people stronger just by influence and just by, guiding them, the dad steps up
Hmm.
and finally makes and helps the kid be able to confront the horror.
Hmm.
And and that's an episode I know that was not well liked when it first came out, but it's one of those ones that I know a lot of people will um
I
that a
know
lot
a
of
lot of
people will
people that love
embrace.
that episode.
Yeah, I do too.
It's
Um,
probably got one of the spookiest soundtracks you've ever heard.
yeah.
But it's one of those fun little thing. Um, when that episode came out, a mate of mine had younger siblings, so I was round. I was around their house the one time, and the younglings were also there, and Night
Hmm.
Terrors had just come out, and they just these two kids they just kept on going tick tock goes the clock, and I was sat in the living room, and all I can hear is this. I can't see where it's coming from. And I'm just thinking, it's broad daylight and I want to run. And every time, because they
Ah!
knew it was shitting me up, and every time and it was there was one time I nearly belted these kids into oblivience. I was around my mate's house quite late at night, and for some reason they got up in the middle of the night, knew I was there, and all of a sudden in the fucking dark, all I heard was tick tock goes. I'm gonna kill these bastards.
Oh, geez. All right. So now that we're here at the end, so I guess it's a final question before we do our final wrap up. What do you foresee in the future of Doctor Who? Especially, what kind of horror would you like to see them tackle in Doctor Who?
Ooh,
I mean, granted, 60 plus years, odds are pretty good they have tackled it,
I was
but
just saying that
I mean,
there's a lot that they've done. I'd like them to do something with Doctor Who that they used to do in Moffat's era. Because there's one episode which it breaks my heart because it could have been the best one ever, which was Vampires of Venice. And that
oh yeah,
annoyed the living daylights out of me because I'm thinking Doctor Who and vampires. So to anyone who watches the classic series, know that concept alone's got quite a bit of weight. And
yeah,
then all of a
they only
sudden
really tackled it in a State of
yeah,
Decay.
yeah, and they turned out to be fish vampires, and I was kind of like, oh right, okay, is that the best we can do? And things like Hyde, which was a beautiful ghost story, and
Hmm.
then it turns out, and then all of a sudden they start to put little bits and pieces in that doesn't necessarily need to be there. Why not just have it as a vampire story with real vampires and a ghost story with just ghosts? And if
Yeah.
they're going to do
Well, they
if they're
did.
going to do a horror story, to actually just
Yeah.
have the balls to say this is a vampire. It's not going to be another thing from another
Yeah.
world. I'd like
Well,
to
there
see
was
all
one
that.
episode there was one amazing episode that did flat out say, no, they're ghosts, is Under the Lake and Before the Flood.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
one that we haven't touched on there. That one was good.
I would love an episode where they balls out commit to the bit. Well, I mean, that's like State of Decay from the East Space trilogy. They did do just balls out do vampires.
Yeah,
in that story.
And it's had a lot. It's had a lot of weight to the lore of the story. The thing is with Doctor Who nowadays, it is very much in its It's very much it's a bit like the 80s. It's very much in its pretty era. It has some dark moments, but everything's very light and fluffy and pretty, which is fine.
Yeah,
that works. But the thing is, and this is the bit that sort of I can't quite get my head around. If there's anyone who knows how to be scary, it's Disney. Surely they take a leaf or two out of Disney's book and say, you want to really shit people up,
Yeah. I mean, it's a tricky beast. Disney is not the Black Cauldron days of Disney like they were back in the days, or Return to Oz. But I will say this:
a Doctor Who that echoes Return to Oz. Oh, I would sell my soul for.
Yeah. No, but I will give it this. There was one episode this last season that I will say rocked me to my core just by virtue of just again, and this is to me, this is the kind of horror that I hope that they really keep going into. Kind of going back to that Dalek idea I had, but one episode that really did a great job showing, frankly, to me, I think the reason why humanity is fucked. And I love the fact that this episode was so damn cynical that it just said, yeah, humanity's fucked, is Dot and Bubble.
That one was out of left field. That was
yeah.
Actually,
I mean,
you know what? You've just reminded me about what I would like to see. Okay, I have a proper answer. Right, is that yes, I'd like to have monsters that are balls out. If they're a vampire, etc., etc. But 73 Yards did go into Celtic mythology with the fairy circle. That's legit. There's basically me and a couple of others. We're all screaming pagans, and we all stood there. And as soon as he broke that fairy circle, I just said, "Well, either he or we are all fucked." And I'd like if they were going to do anything, which you can do in the very pretty era, is you can do folk horror and go into sort of folk mythology. I mean, British folk mythology alone, that could keep you going for series, literally. Yeah. And you do it right, and there's nothing more frightening.
Yeah, I mean, and periodically, Doctor did tip it. Actually, one, in my opinion, a standout episode from Whittaker's era, the Witchfinders kind of dipped its toe into that.
So well done.
Yeah, I love that episode.
We were really worried about that because we thought, oh, here we go, the BBC doing witchcraft again and getting it wrong again, and we all watched it and went, fuck, they actually went and did some research this time. This is bloody brilliant.
Yeah. So I think Doctor Who is at its best when they do episodes where they represent, well, and this is just true consistently throughout the entire run of the entire history of the series, is that when they take real world problems and they find a filter to put it through in order to help put it in perspective to a broad audience, to kind of help them. And not only that, but use horror to really kind of hit home why this is a bad thing and why the Doctor needs to fight it, because what is horror if not putting in front of display for everybody the things that we, as what we'd like to think good people, should be terrified of and what we should naturally be opposed to. And the great thing about a character like the Doctor, who is someone who is out to stop evil, the Doctor is. And the Doctor is a teacher. The Doctor is someone who is able to help put into perspective why this is a bad thing, why this is a horrible thing that should be fought every time. So, yeah, that is, I guess you could say that's a good wrap-up point, but I think that's where the horror is such a vital component to this series.
Well, I mean, all I was going to ask is, what do you want to see in the future of Doctor Who?
Frankly, like I said, I actually kind of feel like we're already seeing it. I wouldn't, frankly, and this is just me, and I've said this many times on the podcast, where while, a lot of people say, like, a message is important, but you got to be subtle about it. I'm like going, no. Being subtle just means it's easier to ignore.
Yeah.
Whereas, and to me, I think the brilliance of eras like the Barry Letts era of Doctor Who is the fact that he wasn't subtle about it. He was balls.
No.
He
It was
just
ball,
said it.
there were balls out about a lot of things.
I, to be dead
Especially Green
honest,
Death.
I want Russell T Davies to just throw a chair out the window and say I'm fucking over it, and just do episodes that flat out say we're sick of your shit. And
I like
just
that.
and I feel like this last season had episodes that did that. I mean, episodes like the 73 yards and the episodes like Dot and Bubble are ones. And actually, as silly as the episode is, even Space Babies had an incredible bit of commentary talking about the actually kind of poking fun. Pretty much, and I'm going to say it, I love the fact that he took a shot at America with that one when they got rid of Roe v. Wade. I love the way that episode flat out said, "Oh yeah, you want us to have the babies, but you don't want to be bothered. You can't be asked to actually do anything about them."
Yeah, that was a bit of a teeth drying moment. Yes.
Oh, I actually I think I remember did a status update where I'm going, Doctor Who, you smacked America in the face. Thank you, sir. Can we have another? And I was so happy. So honestly, what I'd like in terms of the horror, I wouldn't mind if Russell T Davies and company, and they have a great set of writers now going on. I wouldn't mind if they just got rid of their chill and just decided to say we're fucking over it and actually show horror that stems from our actual paranoia of what's going on in the world today.
Absolutely.
That's what I want to see. Just because we need it. Just flat out, we need it. So, all right, I like to do. So, I want to play a game.
Is that the time?
So go ahead, and I'm going to give a little a challenge in the challenge. Give me your top 5 scariest Doctor Who episodes that aren't the popular ones, like the ones that you feel that scared you, but are not commonly praised as being some of the scariest.
All right. Okay. Right. Listen would be one.
Listen.
Because that's just got such eeriness to it. It's just, it's as a bit of a Hammer horror adventure, but because they were really well done, I'm going to say Girl in the Fireplace with the clockwork droids. Mm-hmm. I just thought they were brilliant.
And actually, while we're on, I was going to say, while we're on that subject, recently I had lambasted the movie Smile because the first one, the second one's amazing, but the first one, I said when it came to the scares, I was going, they just kept swiping from Doctor Who, like with as far as like, and The Girl in the Fireplace had scares like that where the doctor's going, well, that's weird. The clock is broken, so what's ticking?
Yeah, exactly.
Smile just kept doing that same scare.
I've not seen Smile. Really got to check it out at some point. Anyway, so there was Listen.
Only watch Smile, so that way you can watch the second one because the second one is fucking awesome.
All right, gotcha. So you got Listen, Girl in the Fireplace, then going back to the classic
Curse of Fenric.
Curse of Fenric. I will die on this hill. That one. There was Ghost Lights, which was fun. That was a proper BBC Victoriana kind of M.R. James kind of ghost story, but
yeah, there was a little bit of a turning of the screw element to that one.
Different, just hit so differently. And then my heart will always belong to Pyramids of Mars because that's what got me into Doctor Who. I love The Mummy, and funny enough, watch Pyramids of Mars and Hammer's version of The Mummy side by side. You will notice quite a few. You can kind of tell, oh, we know what they were watching when they were doing this,
Mm-hmm.
Then we last one.
If it helps, you can feel free to include Big Finish audios in this.
I was thinking Big Finish because of what we were talking about earlier. I'm going to say Zagreus because it's when
bold.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a hot take, but it does really go down that whole business of the Doctor going dark side, the Doctor being out of control, the Doctor giving in, the Doctor just completely at the end of his tether, and like I say, you've got a heroic romantic, beautiful Doctor up against entirely impossible odds. His ship's gone against him. He's dealing with darkness from another universe, and this could be it for him, you know. So I'd stick to Grace on that list. It's the Demons, which is pure Hammer horror. Actually, a lot of 70s and 70s Doctor Who is pure Hammer horror because that was they were kind of working side by side, you know, in terms of what they can get away with as well. Because if they can, basically they sort of said, well, if they can show a Hammer horror on TV, then we can do that in Doctor Who with minor tweaks here and there. If I'm allowed a bonus round, there's one.
Go for it.
There's one. Isn't necessarily a scary. Well, it is actually quite a good scary story, but it's got a moment in it which, as a kid, fucking terrified me. Was Terror of the Zygons. Now, that's more Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but there is the fight between the Doctor and Broton at the very end, where the Brigadier comes into his own and becomes the most beautiful human being on God's green fucking earth. And Broton comes out, and the Zygons have got... This is what the Zygons lost in the new series, was the sheer animalistic fucking fury. And you watch that episode again, and you watch that fight, Broton has got the most ridiculously frightening roar and bellowing, and the way that he's attacking the Doctor, and the Doctor is in pure, unremitted agony, and just thinking, this guy is going to kill him. And if it wasn't for the Brigadier, who literally comes through, says nothing, squares up, and it says him and four other guys, and they just blast him into oblivion, and just thinking, Brigadier, I will always love you.
Nice.
Because at that moment, the Doctor was screwed, you know, and it wasn't the Brigadier, we'd have no more Tom Baker, seriously.
Yeah. All right, I guess it's my turn now.
Yeah, go on.
I'm gonna try to be bold and try to avoid mentioning some of the ones that I've already mentioned. Funny enough, when the 60th was around on TikTok, I did actually devote the entire month of November to the scariest episodes of Doctor Who. One that, for myself, who deals with clinical depression and anxiety, one episode I think that did such a beautiful job, and in my opinion, actually does a great resolution that does not sugarcoat anything and actually says, listen, I can give you words of assurance, but in the end, your anxieties are going to go on no matter what. But the episode from the Jodie Whittaker era, Can You Hear Me?
Yes.
I think is a gorgeous episode. So many people give that episode flack because of that final scene. And I'm like going, the doctor's basically saying, listen, yes, your cancer is in remission. Technically, you're fine. But everything you're feeling is just the product of an anxiety that you feel that it could always come back. And there's nothing I can say that's going to be a cure for your anxiety, because anxiety is something that's the only thing we can just do is just keep living and hope for the best. That's all we can ever do. And the doctor just says, all I can really do is just put my hand on the brake and just keep moving. But I love the way the episode, throughout the entire thing, really gets into the insecurities, the demons that we all suffer, and how that in turn affects us in our everyday life. And that one really hit hard for me. And actually, when I finally met Jodie this last summer at DragonCon, I told her how appreciative I was about that episode. So that's a big one for me. And again, fuck you all. There were some great episodes in the Jodie Whittaker era.
She got some absolutely stonking episodes.
Yeah, another one. I was going to say The Chimes of Midnight from the Eighth Doctor. That one is a winner. That is such a winner. But if there's another episode that actually was during the Doom Coalition series, one that I thought was really well done, called The Red Lady.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that one. Oh,
that one was terrifying.
I wish to change my vote.
The Red Lady was especially terrifying. That one I was really impressed with.
So much big things to think about as well. You have to think, what do I re-listen to the most? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that one really was effective. I really dug the shit out of that one. I will actually put I'm trying to go through the new series because again, there's a lot of solid winners throughout the entire course of that. But actually, I'm actually going to go to bat for Ghostlight, because that to me was kind of like the turning of the screw. It was kind of like it's that idea of and I love the way they apply it to Ace in terms of the fact that it's that idea of evil ever present, that a lot of people who do ghost hunting, like, or who go to haunted houses, they like, a lot of people like say that there's something in this house. There's some, and I love the fact that this is about Ace going back to the origins of a house that she was so terrified of that she actually burned the fucker down. And I love the fact that this is an episode about them, about the idea that he takes the Ace back to this house to confront the demon. So the stuff that actually goes on in the house, I love the episode also because it's so batshit. It is a seriously batshit episode.
It is insane.
Where it has, and all you really need to know is that an alien intelligence has been collecting a menagerie of creatures for its catalog, and ends up hibernating, but all those things for his catalog ends up going out, breaking out and evolving. That's all you really need to know.
Yeah.
But I love the idea that it's this concept that so much crazy shit happens in this episode that the footprint lingers in it, and that a lot of times when you walk into a place with history, or like if you ever walk it, like in Florida, in St. Augustine, the original Ripley's Believe It or Not is there. And they actually do night ghost tours, and they wrap it up with us going inside the Ripley's Believe It or Not at night. And they tell you the stories about what this house used to be. And you feel the energy of the dark shit that goes on there.
Now, there's something I wish I did when I was over there.
Yeah. No. That one is pretty damn great. One that the whole episode isn't entirely horror, but there is an interesting nightmarish element to it, which I really appreciate. And it's a very camp episode in spots, but one that I love from the Key to Time saga, specifically the Stones of Blood.
Oh,
and
wonderful. Yes.
There's one moment. I will say, first off, for just monolithic silicone-based stone monsters, that one is a triumph of visual and sound on that one, because there's a really horrifying bit where just a pair of campers walk up to one of them, and as you do, you put your hand on the stones because you don't think of it, you don't think anything of it, and this couple that are just out there just get sucked dry, and it's such a side scene.
Yeah.
And you know that that's what they're here for. They're here to feed. But there was just something I was kind of amazed by. And there's no music. If I remember correctly, there's no music in the scene. But the second she puts her hand on it, all of a sudden you're hearing that thumping heartbeat in there. And then he tries to get her hand off of it. Then you see, and they do a fade to her turning into a skeleton hand, but you're hearing them screaming. And then it just does a bleed out transition into the next scene. And I was just like amazed by the fact that was a scene of bona fide horror that I never knew Doctor Who was capable of at that time. So that's 4. And honestly, another one, because I think it's the most intimidating the Cybermen ever were, and I was always kind of amazed that the television in the 60s was able to pull this off. This is going to be kind of a tie, but in the same family. Tomb of the Cybermen. Just because the whole sequence where they're coming out of the tombs is incredible.
Iconic, yeah.
But another moment, it's a big episode, but the one moment that they actually kind of recreated later on, but one episode that nailed it was the invasion. Just that moment when the Cybermen are bursting out of St. Paul's Cathedral, and just it kind of goes back to what I was saying about why the Cybermen are terrifying. But that moment when they're just walking down the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral is like, that's a moment that really sums up the thing that makes Doctor Who extraordinary to me. So there you go. That's my 5.
I agree entirely.
Yeah. So, all right. So one final thing we like to do at the end of every episode is like we talk about. So what new horror have you watched recently? It doesn't have to be something that came out this year. Have you seen any new horror films for the first time that you like to tell people about?
Well, like I say, it's I've got a friend who lives up in Chesterfield, which is kind of north of Walsall. I go up there quite often, and he's kind of my horror compatriot. And he introduced me to a film called Nope.
Oh, Jordan Peele.
Oh, do you know what? I must admit, I was watching actually to be honest with you, there was two because we did both in one night. And he says, "Have you ever watched Nope?" And I went, "Nope." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "What?" yeah. That conversation actually happened. It was late. I was just like, "You said, have you watched Nope?" And I went, "Nope." And he went, "Yes." And I went, "What?" Yeah. But the thing is, I thought that was an absolutely cracking piece, and everyone said, "Oh, not a lot of people like it. They couldn't get their head around it." And I thought, and all I said was, "I want one of those alien costumes." And he says, "Fucking good luck." But it was also in that same very long night, because we're big Alien fans. And he says, and he looked at me, he said, "Have you watched it?" I said, "Not yet." And he said, "Sit down." And we watched Alien Romulus. Still my nerdy beating heart. Everything, bar one or two silly little dialogue choices, that film was fucking perfect.
Yeah.
I thought, so it goes Aliens, Alien Romulus. Gotcha.
Yeah. Alien Romulus really kind of brought back Fede Alvarez. The second he got, I saw that he was directing, I was going, "Oh, we're going to be good," because he did such a great job with Evil Dead when he did it in 2013.
Yeah.
I knew he was gonna bring something to Alien, and I was right. So I was so happy about that. So on my side, Joe Bob Briggs at the Last Drive-In is back on again, and celebrating its 100th anniversary. I had never seen it until last night. The Phantom of the Opera, the old Lon Chaney Phantom of the Opera.
wow.
It is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year, and
Wow.
Joe Bob, to kick off his season, just showed it, and it was, I will say, easily, I might even be bold and say I liked it better than Nosferatu, and I like Nosferatu.
Well, I
But
like Nosferatu, but it's a hell of you've got to really kind of want to be in the same room as it if you know what I mean. It's one of those you've
yeah,
really got to watch
but
it.
But the original Phantom of the Opera, I think the thing I was immediately taken with, firstly, the visuals are striking. Even beyond just the makeup of it, just the use of lighting and shadow is masterful in that
Yeah.
movie. I was just so astonished by the idea that so many filmmaking techniques, and this is when cinema was in its infancy, but the fact that it was very clearly made by someone who really did understand the importance of good lighting uh, in there to make for some incredible atmosphere. The film really holds up, and yeah, of course, Lon Chaney's um, makeup is still, and even his performance is still through the roof, fucking amazing.
Absolutely.
But I was so happy that Joe Bob showed it, and as I say to everyone about horror, it's like, think about it like this. If horror is, as trash and as worthless as all that, how is it the films that seem to have survived and are still as beloved and as embraced to this very day, how come they all happen to be horror films? Nosferatu, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, friggin' Phantom of the Opera. Why is it horror seems to be the one where the films where that seem to have survived the test of time in lieu of everyone saying that horror has no value?
No, horror's got a tremendous value.
Loads of value.
Yeah, as I said, you can. It's as integral to human storytelling as you can ever get. Mind you mentioned Nosferatu. I do have to watch the new one, but
I do recommend it.
I want to watch it in tandem because I don't know if it was a film that I saw a trailer for and then completely forgot about and thought, did they ever make it? Which was the final voyage of the Demeter.
Oh, Last Voyage of the Demeter. Yeah,
Last voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah,
I want to watch it in tandem for some unknown reason. I know they're going to be nothing to do with each other, but like I say, I want to watch the new Nosferatu, which I've heard so many good things about. But
it's from it's Robert Eggers who did The Witch and The Lighthouse and
like
The Northman. Yeah, same director.
Does not want to live deliciously.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I tell you what. You take that. You put that in the Doctor Who episode.
Ooh.
Oh.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, actually, they had witches in Doctor Who, and actually turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's actually one of my favorite episodes of the Tennant era, is the Shakespeare Code.
That's true. Yeah, I do like the Shakespeare Code.
I do, but granted, now I will say one aspect of it has not aged well, specifically the fact that jaded cunt frowning saved the day. But
Yeah.
yeah. But at the time, you got to remember at the time, especially with the whole wait till you read book 7. It's like, oh god damn it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Okay, so that was our epic length discussion on horror in Doctor Who. So epic length, in fact, I'm wondering if this is going to be a two-parter. Might be fun. So with anything else, internet etiquette, go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
Okay, well, I am I'm on YouTube. You can go youtube.com/Walsallmatt. But you can also find Walsallmatt on TikTok. Please come and find me on TikTok, because I like doing funny videos on there. There's nothing serious about my TikTok at all. Where literally just come for the lols. And yeah, you can find me there. I'm not going to be on X for much longer. I think I'm going to be transferring over.
Oh yeah, now come to Blue Sky. We got Blue Sky is where the party's at.
Yeah, I was going to say so. But yeah, people can find me on YouTube and TikTok. I think that's enough social media for for one personage.
Exactly.
It's enough for me, because the rest of them I've completely forgotten I had. So
yeah. All right, and and on your YouTube, that's where people can find your Doctor Who fan films.
Yeah, my fan edits and all sorts of weird and wonderful that I decide to do, because I've been on YouTube for what, 20? No, not 20 years. It's never been 20 years, surely.
Actually, yeah. Send me some.
Actually, no, 19 years. I've been on. Oh God, I've been on YouTube 19 years.
Wow.
Oh, that hurts.
That hurts. Well, tell you what, yeah, just go ahead and send me the links of the Doctor Who fan films that you consider to be like some of your best, and I'll just put them in the intro or in the
in the doobly thingy.
Yeah. Precisely.
I'm always doing weird stuff, so.
Yeah, and for everyone listening who are intrigued about mine, you can find my 2 Doctor Who fan films. Doctor Who: A Survivor's Triangle and Doctor Who: Thylosive Burning. That's Thylosive, Thilosiv, as in Victor. Don't ask me where I came up with that name. I was like, it's Doctor Who, just come up with a weird planet name.
And he did. And it was
I did.
And it was a glorious. It was another glorious fan film.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm more proud of that one because, and not for nothing, I actually think my writing improved because it was a long amount of time. I think my writing improved in that one. Also, I'm very proud of a shot I did. Because the TARDIS is actually in a friend's garage in that one. The interior is in a friend's garage. So I actually took my police box and I took out the back, and I was actually able to do my own camera going through the TARDIS doors into the control room.
Yes, you were.
I was so pleased with myself that I was able to pull off that shot. So I was very happy with myself. So honestly, I kind of think it's a more polished film. But if people come to me say that they really love Survivor's Triangle, I'm actually going to take that very much to heart because I'm actually very proud of my companion character I created for those two. I wanted to create a character who was very, honestly, at the time I was like thinking I need a companion who's very real, who comes from I wanted a companion who did not join the Doctor because they had wanderlust or anything like that. I want someone who traveled with them because unfortunately her life has gone so shit that she has no other choice.
Well, she's practically. I mean, it's oddly because it's oddly enough it's a concept that I did in an audio, whereby the companions kind of like because in the audio that I did with a lady called Katie Haynes, I had the concept of what if the companion was the final girl from a horror film, where your companion kind of had that. Only the fact is, rather than being the final girl, you were actually in the film that she was trying to survive.
Well, I think in this, mine actually for me it wasn't even that. It was an abuse drama. That's kind of where my brain went. I was like, I actually went to. Funny enough, I went to a darker place. I just said domestic abuse drama.
Honestly, I'll always go somewhere pretty. You know, it's how that's how I stay afloat.
All right,
I always take the
everybody.
pretty approach.
So Matt, it was so wonderful reuniting with you and really
talking
Talking Who. with you. So everyone else, I hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about Who as much as possible, and also stay tuned because the next season will be airing in. Actually, by the time this episode airs, the new season will have kicked off. So, all right. And for everyone else, if you wish to delve into the dark bowels of human imagination, ask yourself the simple question: what's in the podcast? Thank you for joining us on this edition of What's in the Podcast. If you find yourself hungry for more deep cuts into the gloriously morbid and macabre, you can also find us on TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Narcotic Casserole. You can also follow us on Instagram at Narcotic Casserole 25. Follow us if you dare.